This meeting is being recorded.
Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Vito x DINO podcast. My name is Vito Delsante. His name is Merv Griffin's favorite guest, Dean Haspiel.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dean Haspiel. And before we get to our guest, so why was I in the Merv Griffin show? And when I say on it, I mean in the green room. I wasn't on the show. Why would I be in the green room?
Probably with Shelley, right? I would imagine, right?
Shelley Winters, my godmother, right?
Yeah.
So my family got invited to one of her recordings on the Merv Griffin show. I got to meet Merv Griffin, but it was the guest that was on with her, and this blew my mind. And it wasn't planned this way. It really was like a coincidence. My favorite baseball player from the Yankees, Bucky Dent.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And I got to meet Bucky Dent and Merv Griffin with my godmother and family. And since a kid, he was my favorite,
Yeah.
So that's insane. Out of all the guests you could possibly have, right? So anyway, here's Chris Stevens. Chris, we met in Philadelphia or before Philadelphia?
We met, I guess we officially met at a Baltimore Comic-Con with the Nemo stuff. And then I think you hung out in Philly after that for, the festivals. And is that how it worked?
Well, I would feel so you were part of Locust Moon Comics. Then there was the Locust Moon Comics Festival that you guys did. And you guys had a hot shop in Philadelphia, a hot show. I mean, it really was indie creator friendly, indie creator centric, and there was the three of you guys who basically ran the joint, right? And if you could talk a little bit about that, and then I'll get to more of my experience with you. But can you talk about the origin of Locust Moon Comics?
Yeah, sure. The Locust Moon years, so to speak, would have been 2010 to 2016. And we opened up in one location in 2010. And when I say we, it was me, Josh O'Neill, who now owns Beehive Books, and Andrew Carl. Andrew's got a series coming out from Oni, but I don't think I'm supposed to say the name of it, but he's writing stuff now. And we opened up the first location. And I don't know, Dean, if me and you met in that year. That was like 2010 to 2011. And we... I mean, you can look back and laugh now, but it was one of those situations where we fell behind in rent and the sheriff came and took the key from us as the store was open and customers were in the store and one of those jolly things. So when we got the store, Dean, that you were familiar with that opened in like the summer of 2012, the second location, that's around the time a Dark Horse book that we put together called Once Upon a Time Machine that had started off a few years earlier and was a totally independent effort. I think both you guys might remember Digital Webbing, which was a great site, certainly in the early 2000s and stuff. I know it was helpful to me. And that book sort of started there in the forums and wound up being the Dark Horse book. And then we did the Locust Moon Press thing, which the Little Nemo book came out from, Dean, that you were in.
Well, Little Nemo, we can't even that's not even that is such a huge project, and it had so many heavy hitters from super indie to super popular. It was called Little Nemo, Dream Another Dream, and it was the size of a door. This book, right?
Yeah.
And it won awards, right? It won awards or get nominated?
Yeah, no, it won 2 Eisners. It won a Harvey. It NPR Book of the Year. It got a lot of cool accolades.
It was amazing production. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about as we scattershot your history in comics was, I assume you have a love for anthologies.
I really did when I was getting started, and I can trace it back pretty much, especially with the Once Upon a Time Machine book, and the Time Machine book in its own way did lead directly into Little Nemo. I'll tell that story in a minute. But what it goes back to, and both you guys probably experienced this, maybe not like apples to apples, but just the book fairs of when we were in grade school.
Yeah.
And, for me, it wasn't one of the things where like they had a thing set up outside or they had a little van or whatever. They would just bring you into the library and, they had some of the you know, books set up on tables and whatever. Your mom gave you, you know, $8 or 10, whatever it was, and you bought the books you were going to buy. And I just always remembered that, like, stayed so magical for me, you know, even as life got harder and we got older and, you know, shit got real, so to speak. Those memories and what that feeling was like. And it was usually in the fall that they took place, at least at the school I went to. I'm guessing that was probably usually when they took place everywhere, but who knows? And I just, I wanted to sort of, you know, take a shot at making the best like version of that I could for that era. That was the era, guys, of like, remember when Flight was, you know, kind of a publishing sensation, right? And the big book companies, like the New York book publishing companies, were trying to get into graphic novels, and I think they found some access through anthologies. So yeah, Dean, sorry, in a roundabout way. No, I do. I don't so much anymore. And all I mean is I don't have any ambition to do any more. You know what I mean? Like, there's been.
Well, I mean, what did you like about like because I think about it too, right? And Vito, we've talked about anthologies, we talk about it a lot because in some ways, like,
let's talk. I'd love to hear you guys. Yeah, let's kick it around.
Like, we haven't even talked about this, but I think about the DC comic Time Warp. Remember Time Warp? And I think I probably read my first J.M. DeMatteis comic from a Time Warp, and Steve Ditko probably drew the story, you know, and it'd probably be 6 pages, and it was like an epic science fiction story in like 5 to 6 pages, right? But it was also a testing ground for new talent, or talent that maybe was aging out and needed a, you know, give a cripple crap a crutch, you know, throw a bone to an old timer. So I mean, I didn't know that as a kid reading that stuff. That's something I understand in hindsight. But there's something about 3 to 4 issues in a comic. You know, like I was playing poker with Ann Nesenti in her loft the other night, and she handed me this comic, which listeners is called Outlaw Showdown. And it's part of that. The Oni Press has been publishing their own EC Comics inspired comics, right? Which is like horror, science fiction, mystery, Twilight Zone type stories. And like, you know, she's always put me up to maybe try to draw one of her stories, which I'm grateful for. But there's like 3 or 4 stories, and yeah, maybe one's a dud, two of them are pretty good, or one once in a while is outstanding. I mean, that's the curse of the anthology too, right?
Yeah,
in some ways.
Yeah, that's the nature of it.
But what do you guys think about that?
We've been discussing the like kind of self-made anthology, whether it be you with Antimatter and then me kind of plotting out like Strayverse, like, you know, different stories that of character. Because the joke, Chris, is that I make up these characters that I will never get to. Like, I just keep making characters. And so the thinking about the anthology, I was like, you know, they're not all meant to be leads, you know, for books, like, unless I was show running, you know, like an entire publishing concern, which I don't plan on doing anytime soon. But I have been putting together an anthology just because, you know what, it would be cool to seed some things that are coming with these other characters, you know. So
sure. Well,
I'll probably write.
You have that. That's one of the things when I said jealous, Vito. That's, you know, you have that. You know, you've made these characters. You have. I went through almost everything. I didn't get a chance to read it all, but I read or looked at all the things in the you know, in the Dropbox.
Mm-hmm.
And great. I mean, I don't have to tell you this, and Dean, I know you guys are good friends, so you know this. But it was new to me. I knew about Stray, and for some reason, I knew about Stray, and maybe just because I knew you were a New York guy, and maybe, let's be real, your name, I kind of thought, and I saw you, you know, and I thought maybe like noir, like, you know, and definitely Purple Heart, it has, you know, noirish attributes to it. But I love the Alien one, man. I'm sorry if I'm fucking up the format. Like,
no.
There's no format.
Yeah, we don't have a format.
I love the Alien one, man. That was my favorite one. I think
that was my Prince tribute.
Craft of all of them, but I really dug the Alien one. It just had a real. What nationality is that guy? Is that some kind of like Russian type?
Vasco he's currently drawing the Flash for DC.
It's a really appealing look,
and he I think lives in Switzerland, but he might be of Eastern European origin.
It's very fresh looking, so it makes sense. You know, I could see, put him on the Flash. Sure, that makes sense. But no, I dug getting to know you a little through the work, and enjoyed seeing the variety of it too.
Yeah, I
That's
have.
one of the questions I always have for showrunners slash more in the case of editors. I'm always like, just like you'll certain. I think the more successful comic book writers, to be honest, are the ones who also at least think about the layout or how to draw a little bit, or they elect to not draw because they'd rather write, or it takes too long to draw. But they understand drawing in comics, right? The more successful comic book writers. I was thinking about the more successful comic book editors are probably the ones who are also writers to some degree. And I know Vito's been writing and editing, and I kind of edit here and there once in a while, but I'm mainly an artist, writer, auteur. But Chris, you have been an editor, but I think, and this is one of the things we might talk about at some point with your new publishing concern, is are you going to be writing something as well?
I am, yeah, yeah. I'm working on a book now called Pretender. That, in a lot of ways, I got into it to be a writer. I know you met me as the guy who, had the store and was putting together anthologies, and that is, and I cherish those memories. Trust me, and the experience of it. But I got into it to be a writer, and my lifestyle. There's no excuses for it. My lifestyle and choices I made, my focus. I never was able to sustain it. Like.
Mm-hmm.
Again, since you said we don't have a format, Dean, I don't even know if you know this, but like I got started in 2003, and I got started by I was living in Atlantic City,
Mm-hmm.
and I got like on the internet. I never had a computer, and I got a computer and got like net zero dial up and phone cards and shit. And I found Art Adams' phone number. I found Todd Klein's phone number. I found Jay Lee's email, and I just wrote shit and sent it to them.
That's
And
cool.
Todd Klein was nice enough to say, "Hey, call me. I live in Cape May." And I called him, and he said, "Well, I can't help you, but talk to John Workman. He lives in New Jersey too, and he actually was an editor, and I think he'll like your kind of stuff, and he might have more time to sort of, you know." And but I got started writing stuff, and very quickly was working on short stories with Art Adams and Jay Lee and Farrell Dalrymple, and that was like and Ryan Otley, and that was my beginning. And in some ways, it was glorious, and it felt like it was like a rocket ship to everything I ever dreamed of. And it it didn't come to fruition at the time because of me and me alone, but I didn't have any idea what I was getting myself in for. Like it took by the time the situation I was in that let me have the sort of freedom to be able to work with Jay and Art Adams and focus on and be able to pay them right as a guy, like I wasn't 30 yet or whatever, and I didn't come from money or anything. By the time, and I love them both, and I'm still very close with Jay, and I talk to Jay all the time. I talk to him today, but they both took like 3 fucking years to do the pages. And Arthur never quite finished his pages, right? So I even bring this all up just to say, like, I had this interesting beginning, and it was all aimed at being a writer. And I thought I was going to get my short stories, my 12-page story by Arthur Adams, and my 6-page story by Jay Lee, and my 12-page story by Farrell Dalrymple, and this little story by Ryan Otley, and it was going to have James Jean title spreads and that kind of thing. And I looked at it in my late 20s mind, very small town and naive in a lot of ways. I was like, I was going to make this, and it was going to be my calling card, my business card. And I was going to go to DC, and I was going to say, I need to write Batman. I want to work for you. You know what I mean? Like, it was going to prove, because I got these great artists by myself, and they're going to love my writing and all this shit. And some version of that almost did happen. Like, I almost, like, I don't know if we'll get into all that, but some version did, like where I was dealing with Bob Schreck at DC in like 2006 or 7-ish, something like that. And some version of that almost happened. But that shows you how far back this goes. So what I'm doing now, that I'm able to focus more on writing and stuff, and I've really focused my last 5 or 6 years on, I mean, Dean knows this, but Vito, you and I are strangers, and I don't talk about it much. But I was a very heavy drinker,
Yeah.
to the point of I had a stroke at 41. I had 2 heart attacks before I was 40. Like, I was just, it was what it was, and I couldn't control it, and so on and so forth. And I stopped drinking a little over 5 years ago, and I was 46, and I just, I realized what I'd pissed away. And I've just been sort of hell-bent to make up for it. And I want to make the books that I didn't make, that I blew the chances to make. So in a long roundabout way, this book Pretender, which is going to be 248 pages, takes all this material that either was completed and I just never did anything with it, or it died on the vine, or it was half completed, takes it all. And it weaves it through one story where you start off with a little boy, 8 years old, buying Daredevil 181 in a comic book shop. And and it takes it all the way up probably till, I mean, it's autobiographical in a lot of ways because that's what the material is. But I've told my co-creator on it, Vanessa Cardinale's drawing like the main bulk of it, that the other material will just be sort of woven through. That I don't see it as like a memoir type thing, it's more like a fable to me. I hope in the end it turns out to be very universal. But yeah, Dean, I'm circling back to like, yeah, I'm sort of I got into it to be a writer, and the truth is that it was easier to be an editor. It is a lot. I use the expression with the people I've gotten close to in the work I've done these last 5 years, like Nick Pitara, or now I'm working with Kurt Piers, a young writer who's just super productive. And I use the expression, like there's no blood in it when it's not yours. Like I care as much as anything. I care about every book I'm on, and some of them get to me a little deeper. And I really like, I feel like, very close to the material or to the work itself or to the time spent making the work. But it's not the same, it's so much fucking harder to sit and write the damn book than it is to help somebody make the book better who wrote the book. It's just the truth. I might be ruining it for editors out there, but it's just, it's night and day. So I'm able to focus.
You gotta have a sense of storytelling though to be an editor. I think. I don't think you can just look at a comic script and go, well, you missed a comma there. That's not what an editor really does.
I don't want to say the wrong things during the course of this because I know some people wind up seeing it, but it's crazy. Like I'm working with different publishers now, and it's kind of new to me. And there's some awesome parts of, like, I've never dealt with monthly comics. That's never been something, in all the different shit I've done. I've never done that. And I love it. It's been a lot of fun. It's like kind of youthfully energizing, and I'm digging it a lot. But some of the shit is crazy, just with some of the editorial type stuff and all that. Yeah, it's wild.
Well,
but then again, I'm on my own usually, so it's real easy to look for every I and every T, and it is. I do understand better now how, like, I'm sure you guys both did this. Maybe not. Who knows? But I bet you did. Like, you would get a comic, right? And there's a typo, like a glaringly obvious typo in like a Marvel book, and you'd be like, how the fuck does this happen? I wouldn't let this happen. I wouldn't let this happen. But the truth is, no, it's probably going to fucking happen to you too. So yeah. But
especially the monthly grind, like you said, the ones that have to come out on a regular basis. But what's interesting to me about what you just said, a little bit about your origin story here, in a way, is that you had really great taste early on. And so you didn't just see, if I were you and I wanted to send some stories to have an artist draw, I would not have thought of Art Adams. Are you kidding me? Art Adams?
He's my boyhood hero. He's
a hero, and that's what I mean. Like, that's crazy. I would have been lucky to get, and I'm not dissing, but I've been lucky to get Sal Buscema. Like,
that'd be like getting George Perez to draw your first story. Like, it's crazy. Like, I had
for us, right? John Byrne,
or whatever. You know what it was too, guys, and I've never talked about this ever. Like, even with my friends, it's just never come up. I was 28. I was 28, and in my mind, I was your typical. They make, like, Richard Linklater makes movies about the shit. Like, I was your typical small town wannabe poet who thought there was something bigger out there and grander, but was stuck in the rut of there's a Dylan Thomas poem where he talks about, I long to move away, but I'm afraid that, I think he calls it the spent lie, and that spent lie might come back to life behind his back, and all of a sudden he'll have missed it if he leaves. And that always, I was raised by my mom and grandmom and was sort of the man of the house at a very, you know, super young in that sense. There were no men involved. So like I was stuck in this small town. And I looked at it, even though I never made a fucking effort. Like the only effort would have been to have a notebook and write a script in it, because I bought the complete scripts of From Hell and saw how they were formatted and said, "Holy shit!" Like it was
What
like
a bit
a
of a
lightning
steal.
bolt, you know.
Don't that.
But by the time I was 28, in my own self belief, which was crippling, and Dean, me and you've talked about this, so you know I'm happy to, but like my own self belief was so immense that it was helpful at sometimes. It helped me call Art Adams and say, "Hey man, work with me," and I was,
let
you
me
know
ask
what I
you.
mean?
Let
But
me
it
ask you a
also
question.
crippled me.
Let me ask you a quick
But
question. Was your mother and grandmother, you said who you lived with, were they super encouraging to you?
yeah, yeah,
The
my
reason why I
mom.
ask is because there's a famous thing about Orson Welles. Orson Welles was his mother whispered in his ear or said to him every day, "You're a beautiful boy. I love
Oh,
you. You can get anything done you ever wanted to get done." And that's how he
that's
had the
how my mom
confidence
was.
to do everything that he did, you know? So he had that growing up, he had that encouragement, that courage, that confidence, like, and and he also happened to be talented. Like that helps, right? Because you
I've
could
been
you could tell
watching.
a monster the same thing, and then suddenly they would go and ruin the world, right? Like so.
Yeah,
In
I've
fact,
been watching his
Orson
interviews.
Welles did a radio show where he convinced half the world that there was an alien invasion. You know, like
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway, and one of the things I wanted to say to you, and I don't mean to cut you off, but like I'm trying to piece a couple of things together as well, because we have a
Sure.
sordid history, you know, where I came to know you as one third of this great comic shop and this great festival, and suddenly these great comics, and
Yeah,
you have a taste, you have a personality, you have
I
you
have an
know you
inability to
want,
get the
you know,
thermos
I
open.
never, except for the
Sorry.
thermos, you gotta you can do it. See, you
Jesus.
can do it, Chris. You got this.
Good
But
Lord.
there was a crash and a burn, and you know we'll just call it substance
Yeah,
abuse. And then you burned a lot of bridges, man,
yeah,
including mine for a little while. You know,
yeah,
like
yeah.
and I feel like now what's going on in your recovery is a resurrection of sorts, and now you're getting back to actually experience making comics and working in the comics industry, which all of us, everybody who wants to get in comics when they're kids, have no idea what it's
Yeah.
like. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
it's you
Yeah.
can't even predict what
I
you
mean, the
go through.
Kirby line is so true. I mean, you know, the comics that'll break your heart, kid. You know, absolutely.
Yep.
You know, Wally Wood, even Wally Wood saying he wish he cut his fucking hands off instead. I mean, yeah, yeah, but no, definitely, man. I mean, but yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just saying, it's been really interesting to see this resurrection of sorts, if you want to call it, you know, not necessarily a rebirth or whatever, but
I'm
a
happy to call
recommitment.
it that. I think I said to you on the phone, I'm not embarrassed by it at all. No, I feel born again, and I don't mean that in you know, there's a church pew underneath me. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I love this stuff. I love this stuff the same way I did when we were 12, man. You know, that
What?
love is that love is never dimmed. So it feels good to be capable of doing what I think I always could have done, and I just got in my own way. You know.
What
Hmm.
was the book, the first book that you remember just like reading as a maybe 12-year-old, maybe even younger, that kind of opened your eyes to the whole idea of telling stories this way? And the reason why I'm asking is I'm trying to figure out if post substance abuse, like reinventing yourself, does that book still hold the same wonder to you today?
Oh, it sure does, man. Yeah, it sure does. It would be Daredevil 181. The
Put that in
death of
there.
Elektra. I was 8 years old, and there was this tiny. I lived in a town that's part of Atlantic City, but it breaks into like three little towns that get progressively smaller and richer as you go, or whatever. So the town next to Atlantic City is called Ventnor, and you know, back in those days, maybe 8,000 people. And between the beach and the bay, there's four small blocks, you know, so it's that type of place. But I guess looking back on it now, you know, with some of the knowledge we all have about the history of everything, I'm guessing the direct market had done well enough where even a town like that, you know, they opened up a little side corner store next to the barber on the way to the beach or whatever. And I went in there at 8, and that Daredevil book was hanging on the wall, and it was $5, and like it just caught my eye, and the $5 caught my eye. I kept thinking, like, why is this book $5? You know what I mean? $5 was a lot of money back then. You know, like $5 was like $100 book now, probably, or you know, something like that. And I brought that book home, and I'd read other books. I begged my mom for the $5 the next day. I went and got the book, and I'd read plenty of comic books. I think I first probably started reading comics at like 5 or something. There was an older kid across the street, and he had stacks of comics like Spider-Man and, you know, all that stuff. But this book was different, and I knew it was different. Like just the flow of it, and it was so much more. I didn't think of it that way at 8, but just much more immersive. And I kept the other books I read, and I liked them, and I would pretend I was Spider-Man after, or I would think about their powers or shit like that. But that book, I kept thinking about it, and I kept thinking about the story, and I kept thinking about the what we would all now call the beats of it. You know, I wasn't, you know, thinking of it that way at 8. But that was, you know, that's a big book for me. And if it still means the same, the reason I look up is because, yeah, it's framed like a little bit out of eyesight here. So yeah, that book. I mean, yeah, that book's a big one to me.
And that's spoiler. That's the Death of Elektra, right? Issue.
Yeah.
Right? And it's funny because I'm trying to think. I remember reading those comics when they came out. So there was a build up to 181. For you had not read any Daredevil previous, so it was a cold read.
I barely knew who he was. I saw him, you know, in a Spider-Man comic. I knew he was blind. You know what I mean? I knew.
Is he even on the cover of that comic?
He is.
Is he? Okay.
I think he's doing the pose.
But Vito, you're not nuts for asking that, because it's the thing, and it's not the Daredevil that caught me even all those years ago. We're talking over 40 years ago, and I still like remember what caught me. He is on the cover. He's the largest figure on the cover. But the reason you ask that is because it's Bullseye and Elektra, and they're coming at each other like this.
Right.
That's what gets you. And you know, yeah, it's deeply this book Pretender I'm writing. Miller's in there because I met Miller, and I had this dinner with Miller, and I asked Miller to smoke weed with me, and I was 25. I went on this cruise for the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, and I thought I was destined. I thought I was going to take my place with Neil Gaiman and Frank Miller, you know, and you know, it all started off great, but I just wrote those scenes. I wrote the scenes in the summer, and my Vanessa just sent the layouts 2 days ago. So I was just going through those today. But yeah, no, with the editor, I'm sorry, I'm probably spacing on the question, and
no, you're not spacing at all. I think we're.
Oh yeah, I think you're right on. By the way, and here's the cover for those that might not. I forgot that Daredevil was even on it. But yeah,
he's the biggest thing on it.
Yeah, I don't know how I forgot.
Yeah, you're not looking. No, he became his own background.
I totally understand how you forgot, because the thing that sticks with you is them. It's almost like it's a deadly dance, you know.
Yeah, and it's funny because I remember Yellow, you know, and like Bullseye and Elektra against the Yellow, but they're not.
What's interesting is that's the thing nowadays, right? Like that's what most of that like hot cover artists are doing, is using this one sort of vibrant background, and the thought process being that's what on a phone is that's what works looking at it on a phone, which is pretty fucking sad, but that's where we're at. But that's doing that 40 something years ago, you know. That's pretty wild. It's not too many covers just had the I never thought about it till you just said it, but yeah, no, I got all kinds of. I mean, you can't. I got shit like this here. Like it's talking about Art Adams. This was the. I don't know if it's going to show up, but that was the
Heroes for Hope.
It's the retailer promo poster, you know. So like this was on the wall, that store I'm telling you about. Not that exact one, right? But like I remember seeing shit like this. So yeah,
I have work in that book. I helped Chaykin and Simonson. When I was, because I think that was in 1985 when I was working on Thor with Simonson, and New Mutants and Electro Assassin with Sienkiewicz, and American Flag with Chaykin, and they were everyone. I forget, there was like a ton of writers and a ton of artists, right? Like doing that book. Oh, yeah. And I think I filled in the blacks and maybe drew some backgrounds. The book
is pretty unique. Like somebody, I might be, there might be some other example, maybe one of the 9/11 books, and I don't mean to say or something like that because that sounds, I don't, I don't mean to sound disrespectful. That would be the only thing I could think of that would have, because that book has Alan Moore, Miller, Bernie Wrightson.
Stephen King, I think, is in it too.
Who,
Stephen
Vito?
King.
Yeah, Stephen King.
Yes, Stephen King.
Remember, that was a huge deal.
Ellison, Harlan Ellison.
Yep.
On it,
Great.
like, I don't think there's not too many. I always like to, if I have any, I think especially now with a clear mind, I'm a fair judge of my own stuff and the books I've made over the years. I think I'm a fairly fair judge, and maybe you guys feel the same about your stuff, but I don't have too high an opinion of most of it, to be honest, right? But the Nemo book, I do think of in my own ego as probably the greatest anthology ever made. Like, I just think it's hard to top,
Well, think
And
of
I
it
know
think of it this way. It was, it won a couple of awards, so it's been kind of vetted through the comics community at the very least. But I mean, the NPR list, you're looking at a broader list. So I mean, there's validation. Like, you can't say that there isn't. So I would say you're justified in thinking highly of it.
Well, you guys will enjoy this as guys who have been doing this a long time, and it's how hard it is to do. I've joked around. I'm in touch. Andrew Carl, who was the third part of Locust Moon. I'm still in touch with him all the time, and he's actually my editor on the book Pretender that I'm writing, and he was a huge help to me in the week leading up to the Lighthouse Tyrant announcement a couple weeks ago. So we're in touch all the time, and he. I've joked with him, when I've been broke and said, man, easiest thing in the world to do if it was just about money, the easiest thing in the world to do would be to do another Little Nemo, because I already know, I mean, I don't think I'm revealing people's shit or whatever, but I'm pretty sure Mike Mignola would do it and Dave McKee. So it wouldn't just be like a reprint. Like, I'm pretty sure I could produce a whole other spectacle, so to speak,
Absolutely.
of the best of, and it would make
Absolutely.
$200,000 on if the first one did 155 10 years ago. This one would, these things have kind of a formula to them. It would easily be six figures, let's just say. So if it was just about money, but again, like when you brought up the anthologies, Dean, it's funny. I did a podcast with a young guy who I think is a great young champion of comics, and he's trying to get his toehold in this vast landscape of comics talk. And he asked me about the Golem books, and he was commenting on the talent involved, and I said to him, like, I don't think I'll ever do that again. And it's more a function of like it wouldn't. I don't know. You got, like, you did it in.
Well, wait. Let's put it in context. Let's put it in context a little bit. The Gollum books. When you mention that, people who don't know what that is the Gollum of Venice, and there were two parts, right? And the both books had let's call it the prime artist that drew the story, but there were interstitials basically where there might be a sequence or a scene. In fact, you hired me for Gollum 2, Gollum Venice #2, to do a framing sequence around the likes of like Howard Chaykin, Stan Sakai.
Yeah.
Who are the other two? Yes.
And Nick Dragata.
And Nick, yeah. And like those are heavy hitters right there, and like I'm the guy, the squeaky wheel around him or whatever, so
but without you, we talked about this, and I know we're doing the show. I'm sorry, keep it like we're having such a nice talk that I'm not even thinking like this is public.
Don't think about it.
Yeah,
this is what we do.
The way we do it.
Oh, great. Yeah, but no, like we talked about this. That doesn't look, I loved that was a thrill for me. I just had to email with Howard Chaykin recently, and it was great. I told him I'm going to read the Hey Kids comics over the holidays, and I meant it, but he replied like there will be a test, so it's like, just to get connected to him. And I thought it was so cool of Dragata, because Dragata was already like deep into the absolute Batman shit when he agreed to do it. And it'll probably never happen again, because I know now he's DC exclusive. So, there could be a Golem 3, 4, and 5, and he probably wouldn't be able to. So I thought it was nice that he did it. It was a lot of fun. Sakai was Hanan Beiser, the creator of the Golem of Venice Beach books. Sakai was one of his like total dream figures. So to have that happen was cool. But without you, it's just a bunch of pinups, you know. And I say that with all
Right.
love to those guys.
But and
without
again, but that's the design of the book. So you gave me something to anchor those pinups with, right? But then there was the bigger book, and you had like Jai Lee. You had such great. You always work with really good guys, and I was really honored when you and that I was also available that you chose me to anchor that sequence. You know.
Well, hey, since you told me in the text, like and stuff, the candid talk, and plus it's me and you and Vito, it just seems like such a fine fellow. It's like family, right? I just feel comfortable. That was me in a way. Yeah, I thought you were perfect for it, but it was also me remembering. If you remember, I talked to you when I looked to get you to do it, and I told you like, hey, you've seen me at my worst, kind of, right? So I want to let you know I stopped drinking and so on and so forth, right? But that was me in a way. You were the perfect guy for the job, and that's at the end of the day, that's what it boils down to the most, right? Who's best for the material. But it was also me, remembering you chiding me a little bit, even if it was playfully about like, oh, I'm good enough for this panel, but I'm not good enough for the panel with Sienkiewicz. Or so I was like, well, guess what,
Such a deep
motherfucker? Here
move.
you are. Here you are with Jay Lee and David Mack. So you're right there, you know. So I was
Thank
making
you.
up for
Thank
I was
you.
making up for lost time, you know.
Thank you.
But no,
Thank you.
without you, they're pinups, and you know what I mean. And that's not
No, I appreciate
disparaging.
that. But it
It's the
is like
truth.
you are re-entering, not to. I know it's sensational to talk about someone having a downfall or
Hmm.
a burnout or whatever, burning bridges and everything like that. But I am fascinated by your resurrection because I realize as a human being, I used to say I'm attracted to conflict, but someone rejiggered the word and say you're addicted to conflict. But maybe that's true or not. I don't do therapy. I should, but I
I don't
always give
want
people a
to.
second chance. I always give people a second chance. So as much as I was like, fuck Chris Stevens at one point, you came back at me and not tail between your legs, but just like, hey, I've been going through some shit. Uh I'm not drinking, whatever, all this stuff. I mean, you look very different to me, like from the last time I saw you, in
Yeah.
real life.
Oh yeah.
You're thinner, you look healthier,
Yeah.
and you were a mess, for whatever reasons, and you don't have to get into it or whatever.
Here's a
I
here's
don't
a
even know all of it,
I don't
but
want
yeah,
to
it just
jump.
I'm very happy that you're in a better place right now.
I
And
kind of
Oh
want to
well.
and
jump in on that, Dean, and ask Chris, like, where does Golem of Venice fit, not fit, but fall in terms of your recovery? Like, is it the first project you did after, recovering and being sober and everything?
You know, the Golem of Venice Beach will always be, and Hanan Beiser, the creator, Hanan will always be, as long as he wants to be, he'll be in my life. And if he, whatever books he wants to make, I'll help him make. Because when he reached out to me with the Locust Moon dissolution, there was a period where I was so, that happened, and I had gotten myself in crazy situations and all kinds of just crazy shit. And in the back of my mind, there were still Locust Moon royalties that were going to get me out of all these problems. You know what I mean? Like there was still going to be this nest egg that when the dissolution of things was completed at the end of the 2017, let's say, that there was going to be X amount of money, and that didn't turn out to be the case. And I went like just, it was bad. I went through 2018. We had a Dark Horse book come out in 2018, and it seemed great to people. And I did a couple big book signings. There was that big store, Amalgam Comics, that was owned by Ariel, in Kensington and
Yeah.
in Philly. And I did one at, fucking Forbidden Planet in Manhattan. And I did one at like the ritziest Barnes and Nobles and Rittenhouse Square in Philly. So on the surface, that looked like, oh, a book's out. But I've joked with Andrew, like, the next time I have a copy of that in my possession, I'll read some of the stories for the first time, like it was, Andrew did most of the heavy lifting on that. So I was kind of in the wilderness with it. And I remember saying to Andrew going into like 2019, I said, I had sold some of my comics that I had with me, like just pathetic shit to get drinking money. I sold like the fucking Swamp Thing 37, the first John Constantine for $20 or something, because that could get me, I could get a half gallon of vodka and, dime bag of weed or some shit. But I made a post, long story short, in a sense. I'd been on Facebook and never really a big social media guy, but I had a Facebook account and I'd used it enough that I knew there were different groups and shit on there. And I'd seen like Connecting Comic Book Writers and Artists group, and it looked like people were looking to hire people in there. And I said to Andrew, well, I'll try to edit books maybe. Like, I've sold off the comics that are worth anything. And, I was so down and out that it wasn't like I was going to go get a job or anything. And I put up a thing and I just said, hey, I'm a multiple Eisner winner, which I can technically say because fucking book won 2 Eisners and it sounds good. And I said, hey, I'm a multiple Eisner Award winner and I've worked with so-and-so and this is what I've done. And on paper, right, it all sounds good, especially if you're looking for an editor. And Hanan saw it and emailed me and he was just like, I've got this screenplay. Told me a bit about his background, and he stressed to me that he wanted, I think the exact way he said it was he wanted stars. He didn't want to take a route of like, I'm going to self-publish my comic and go from there. He was a little older than maybe, he wasn't 25, not that he's old or anything, but he wasn't, 25, 30 trying to get into comics. And I didn't think it was real at first. Why would I? You know what I mean? Like when people say like, oh, well, I saw you worked with Bill Sienkiewicz. Could you get him to do it? And you say, well, Bill's very expensive. This would be the range. And just not many people can afford it, like that kind of thing. So I wasn't sure at first it was real, but then I did realize he was serious. And yes, it was a real, I value it very much because it gave me the chance. Now, I drank the whole first year of it. I didn't stop drinking until September 2020, and we started working on that in like February 2019. So I drank the whole first year.
Jesus, COVID must have been a rough one too. When you think
COVID, what's funny? Sadly enough, COVID for me was great because I had moved to Tucson in the summer of 2019, and they sell liquor in the supermarkets here, and the supermarket was in walking distance, and the liquor was super cheap, and I was able to use my wife's debit card because I could buy a roast and get the vodka at the same time, and it wouldn't show up. So it was actually great for me, COVID. As fucked up as that is, COVID was fine. Like I didn't really want to socialize with anybody. I wasn't looking to like hang out and smoke weed with people and shit like that. But I was still drinking. I was drinking I was drinking a lot of vodka. No drugs or anything except smoking weed when I could get it, but I couldn't, I didn't have much money coming in. But the golem for me, and I did realize it was calculated, in the sense that I was aware of it. Once I realized Hanan's ambitions were founded in his ability to like make them concrete, I thought to myself, okay, he's going to get something that, and maybe it's a little cocky, but I did think, okay, he's going to get something that not many other people could give him. And it's going to give me a bridge back to what I do, like work with great artists and like be a sort of, just be involved in this sort of thing. So that was my approach. And, it went down pretty quickly. It was like, I read some of the script and there was a flashback that it was going to be the Golem's origin. And it was like, fuck, Sienkiewicz. And, Sienkiewicz was one of the only guys who, when I say stood by me, it sounds like I'm bitter or something. That I'm not. We're telling stories here, and I don't know how else to relate the narrative of it, right? But Sienkiewicz was one of the only people who I kept in touch with pretty steadily when I was at my worst, 2016, 17, 18. I would talk to him on the phone when I was in the Bronx, and I'd be fucked up, like I'm sure I wasn't a pleasure to talk to. But he was great, and so he was fresh in my mind, And plus, if you're going to create a golem and you can get Bill Sienkiewicz to do it, why not, right? And so once he said yes, and I've always been in touch with Jay. I've known Jay since like I said to you guys, I first met Jay in 2003, so I've known him forever. And there's not much you can do. And Hanan, if you watch this, I love you, but there's not much you could do with Nazi stuff. And I've said this to Hanan, we've all seen it so much, you know what I mean? So when I read a script and it's got World War II flashbacks and concentration camps and stuff like that, I just think Jay can grant things an instant gravitas. And that's what this needed. This couldn't be a thing that lingered over the fucking horribleness of it. It just needed real quick to be, okay, Nazis and concentration camps, right? But no, the golem for me, Vito, it was, and it brought me together with Vanessa Cardinale. So she drew the bulk of the two books, and now she's drawing Pretender, and I'm helping her. I'm her editor on her writer-artist debut that we're working on, and I was a tiny bit involved. She did the Slumber series for Image a few years back, and I was a little bit involved in the beginning of that one. That was interesting. No, the Golem will always.
And I know you've got other projects lined up now because it's going to veer into your current publishing concern. But in a way, you're reminding me. The more you're telling your story right now. I remember going to West Side Comics on 86th Street or 87th Street. I can't remember, in Upper West Side Manhattan. It's one of the comics I used to go to because I lived at 79th and Broadway. And there was Funny Business like on 92nd Street. There was another shop somewhere, and then West Side Comics. And I remember they were going to have a real life cartoonist signing there. And I went to go meet this guy. Never read his comic. His name was Dave Sim. He did a comic called Cerebus. All right. And I go in, and the guy, it was just something off. There was something up with that guy. And like, I think the only other cartoonist I was aware of was a guy that would go on David Letterman named Harvey Picar. And I started thinking, yo, what is up with cartoonists? Do I want to be a cartoonist? Like, geez, Louise. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is because he was a self-publisher that published one comic book.
Yeah.
That's how he lived. You know, like it wasn't Marvel, wasn't DC, wasn't Archie, wasn't Heavy Metal. You know, it wasn't like at some point, I guess, you know, there's Pacific Comics and all those other emergence.
It was a singular obsession.
Yeah, and in a way, like what pulled you back in was I'm a multiple Eisner Award winner. You can point at a book that everyone has heard of and everyone loves. So it recommends you, right? So it kind of pulls you back into getting a gig, right? To bring you back into making comics, right?
Yeah, Hanan would have seen the Nemo book. Sure, yeah.
Sure. And now you have been hired as a freelance editor, I'll call it, right? That's what you are, a freelance editor.
Yep.
But now with Lighthouse, where you're putting your flag in the dirt, the comics dirt for real now, you know?
Yeah.
And your first publication is going to be a reprinting of Steven Bissette's Tyrant comic, which you have right behind you, and your head next to an Eisner. Actually, I see right now.
Strangely enough.
Would you look at that?
Strangely enough.
But I do think that what's encouraging me is like when I started doing Kickstarter comics in 2023, I joke, but I'm also it was kind of true that I kind of quit comics in 2023 because I was tired of pitching to Marvel and DC to get a morsel here and there, or to do occasionally draw someone else's story. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to lean into Dean, and I'm going to start my own little publishing concern through Kickstarter. I call them deep cut comics right now, but that's just, you know, smoke and mirrors in some way that call it that. And I don't know. I've never like come up with a publishing name, but I am doing that in a way like Dave Sim, except instead of being one title, it's a scattershot of titles. Vito and I talk about publishing. Huh?
You're building a world.
Building a little bit of world that I started in 95 with Billy Dogman when I invented Billy Dogman in 1995, you know? So I've been, and then creating new characters, but I'm still kind of stuck in a way.
How many?
What?
How many?
Not that many.
You better, come on, man.
Vito, I cannot catch up to you, man. I can't do it. I won't do it.
I stopped too.
So. Just so I don't forget, guys. Just so I don't forget,
yeah.
Vito, and I don't know the names of the characters. Forgive me, but there's an action scene in the book that was sort of Global Guardians-ish, right? The superhero team book.
Golden Guard.
There we go. Thank you. Sorry for not remembering exactly. But there's an action scene where you've got like, I guess it's like it reminded me of a G.I. Joe toy, and I'm spacing on the name, but like it fires all the missiles and it's fighting a whale, like a giant whale man, basically, right?
Oh God, yeah.
Oh, it's awesome, dude. Loved it. I'm reading Moby Dick right now. So not that it was Moby Dickish, but to see the whale was I love seeing the whale.
It's funny because like Dean and I were talking about this concept that we were talking about last week, and we were talking about it over text or email. And I made the note or the comment, this is me at my most Morrisonian, meaning Grant Morrison kind of weird thing. And it's funny, like you were talking about kind of like not so much like how your tastes change or how your writing changes or, you know, what influences come in, you know, when you don't expect it. But I don't know that the guy that wrote the first couple of comics that I wrote with Dean, Michel Fiffe, you know, like the first few comics that I wrote, I don't know that I would have been impressed with that guy now. You know what I mean? And I don't mean to say that those were bad. You know, like they were perfectly serviceable for what they needed to be, if not, you know, above that. But there's a certain like risk taking that I'm willing to do now, maybe because it's all me, you know, it's all on my shoulders more than anything, that I don't think I was willing to do before.
But you've also, I believe that's probably all true, but and you've also grown into it in your confidence, even if you don't think of it that way. It's there, and you're like, it's a natural thing probably to want to try to, you know, different angles on things.
Well, also you didn't start off as editors, guys. You started off as wanting to write.
Right.
You know, I only wanted to draw, you know, so my writing came much later. And so, yeah, I cringe at anything I've written early on. I cringe at what I wrote today.
You
know, whatever.
I was gonna say you cringe at that JLA comic that you did, the JLI one.
It's awful. Although your 5-page Batman story is perfect. It's sublime.
That 5-page Batman story was crafted for a fantastic artist, and it was easy to make it as good as it is because the idea of it was so on the page that you can't really, you know, you can't
fuck it up. It was a perfect script.
Yeah.
Forgive my ignorance, and I will make a point of checking it out afterwards. But who was the artist, Vito?
Oh, that was Dean Haspiel.
Oh, I think I already know what to expect.
Yeah,
it's called the couch. It's called the couch, and you could have drawn it, Chris. That's how perfect the script is.
Oh, like, I love it. How cool is that? How did that slip past my radar? I didn't.
Well, I didn't.
He was in Batman Adventures, and I had to draw in an animated style, but I couldn't really pull it off. I did my best, you know, where Batman looks like Jay Leno or something like, you know. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's just, but it was such a great story, and I forget exactly. I think I was in Joan Hilty's office or something, and I recommended you, Vito, maybe.
Yeah. You had talked to me at the comic store, and you had said at Jim Hamlin's University, and you had said, "Hey, do you have a Batman, you know, like a 5-page Batman script in you?" And I was like, "Yeah," but meaning like I could make a 5-page Batman script, you know. And that's the one thing I think that very early on I did a lot of short stories, like a lot of like 5-page, 11-page, 8-page, a 3-page Scooby-Doo story, you know, like.
Fuck yeah.
Like there was like all these short little things that, because I was so disciplined in like structure, you know, like I knew like 3-act structure. You got to do this, this, and this, which is funny because that's all up there. Like for my daughter, like we have this thing where it says plot, beginning, middle, ending, and all that stuff. You know, like elements of storytelling. Like we had that up for a long time for Sadie, and I mean, I was very disciplined about it. Like I wasn't willing to break format. And then the other part of it is I'd make the joke that whenever I come up with a new idea, the first artist I see is Dean, because he was the first artist I worked with. And I mean it in the sense of we sat in a room and we were discussing the script after I had written it. Like, what if we did this? What if we, you know, like, and you know, it just made sense. You know, like,
can I just jump in there real quick?
Absolutely.
You hit something that I can relate to so deeply. I was when I first was getting started, one of the people that I met in the beginning in that era that I was saying earlier with you know, Arthur Adams and stuff was Farrell Dalrymple. And Farrell lived in New York, and I lived in, you know, Dean, you knew him. You lived across the street from him.
You lived across the street from me, and we would wave at each other through the window. Yeah.
Yeah, and I and I was very close with Farrell from like 2003 to like 2015. And we did a bunch of stuff together, probably something like 35 pages of it'll be in this Pretender book that we've been talking about. A couple, complete story, and then some stories that didn't get completed and stuff like that. But for years, from 2003 to 2016 or something, I saw every idea I had was through Farrell. That's just how I saw it. That's what his work was to me. It's just like to the point, and not a story I would tell often, but we're having fun here, and what's the point if we're not going to have fun, right? But I had this thing with Farrell that'll wind up, part of it that got done will wind up in Pretender. It was called The Ear Farmer, and we were contracted with Dark Horse for a 96-page OGN, and it was going to be serialized in Dark Horse Presents, and then 96-page OGN, and the deal was great. Without getting into it, it was like a really great deal. Like the things were kind of riding high with Dark Horse after that first Once Upon a Time Machine book, and they were happy, and it was like a great deal. And the book just, it didn't get done. We got like a year and a half into it, and there was only, whatever, 16 pages done or something. And I passed, and I look back on it, and I don't know if I would do the same thing if I was clear-minded the way I am today. But I passed on continuing it without Farrell, and I don't think I don't think it's being an asshole to say I wasn't the one who wanted it to end. You follow me? Farrell sort of removed himself from the project, and I still was so caught up in this creative, whatever you want to call it, because it's not healthy. But I so only saw shit through his eyes that I passed on the chance to have him replaced and keep the book and keep my book deal. And so I look back on that. I'm not sure I would do that nowadays, but
that's totally understandable. It's understandable because that's how you envision the book. That was the project. It's like that's what he had done, third of the graphic novel or half of it.
No, there were 80 pages to go. So
right, but you should have continued in hindsight. But I also understand that was the project, was you two guys.
What's beautiful about you guys, and I'm inferring a bit here, and I'm assuming a bit. I understand that, and this probably also speaks to the fact that you both have been on a little bit more solid ground over the course of your friendship. Then certainly I can't speak for Farrell, and I wouldn't, but for myself, obviously I wasn't for the most of the years of my friendship with Farrell. But you guys seem to have a very healthy tit for tat type thing. My relationship with Farrell, I imagine, at a certain point probably became a strain on him because I was pretty wild, and he meant so much to me. And I'm the classic, raised by women, no siblings, super small family. When I was growing up, my friends, my boys, right? They were my, you know what I mean? And that's how it was with comics. And comics people tend to be more, I don't want to say reserved. That's not the right way of saying it. But
they're more insular and introverted. A lot of comic book people are introverted.
Introverted.
And I would say that Farrell's an introverted type guy. I mean, he's a tall dude, and he's got a certain confidence and swagger. But a lot of people, and I'm trying to remember some of our parlays, and I remember specifically blowing up at you at a Society of Illustrators thing, and I don't remember what you said that sparked my ire, but I guess it comes with the territory of I'm going to write my first comic book, I'm going to talk to Art Adams. That same mindset is a guy that's a little highfalutin. I think maybe you've always had a high expectation of everything is what I imagine.
This circles back to, and I might have not made the point earlier, but yeah, it circles back to when you guys were saying at 28 to talk to start off with Art Adams, and I meant to make the point of, I'm coming from this real small town, and my views are in one way worldly, and I've read a lot of shit, right? And I've got these ideas, and I think I've got a bead on some things about human nature, but in the other time, I'm a very small town guy. And in the years after high school of just sort of fermenting, so to speak, by the time I was 28, I felt like all the lost treasures had been left behind me, and I better, you know what I mean? I felt like I was ready, you know what I mean? So yeah, no, I definitely had immense self-belief because I cared about this shit so much.
No,
Because I
absolutely. And I
spent
think
I
comics,
spent so much time reading it. I spent so much time thinking about it, you know? And I did. And I don't want to say it didn't help because that sounds like I'm not, there's no excuses to be made or needed for anything. This is life. But I always have, like when you were saying earlier, oh, you have good taste. That's something that when I got the chance to be around professionals like Farrell or Jay or James Jean, and David Mack, like that's what always came back to me was like, oh man, you like Jay just gave me a quote and like sure he's not buttering me up, but he's doing it like extra nice because he knows I'm going to use it to try to attract jobs or whatever. But in it, he says Chris is a tastemaker. And like that shit that like David Mack would say to me, oh man, like you see any new artists? Like, because you have such great taste. James Jean, it's how I was able to sort of hold my own as a fucking country bumpkin with a genius. James Jean's kind of smart, you know, like James Jean was the first artist I ever talked to on the phone where it wasn't the art that was intimidating to me. It's like, you know, I would say something about Miles Davis and he would just go 17 layers deeper. You know what I mean? It was just like, you
but
know,
but
but it does.
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, as you say, to speak to the blank page, which is comics. What you can call it digital now, whatever, but the blank piece of paper. And I'm sitting here with the script and I got my layouts and I'm going to try and turn that. There's nothing easier, more easy access to making comics than drawing or doing something on a blank page. But at the same time, the business of comics can be super humbling, right? So as much as it's attractive and should be easy enough to just do, there is a line at some point where you have to cross over and suddenly you're in the business and in the industry of it and you have to deal with other people and personalities and all this stuff, and it's stuff I learn all the time. I find myself, the older I get, the less I know, okay, not only about comics but about people, and it's super humbling. And not that I'm a guy that tiptoes on eggshells, necessarily,
No, I wouldn't say
but I am
that.
aware of the eggshells at least these days than I was before. So maybe
Sure.
there was a certain bravado that you had, and I have had a bravado. I don't know if Vito's
I
ever had a
think
certain.
I think what Chris is saying though is that there's a certain and I think the word is going to sound worse than I actually intended to mean, but I think there was a certain ignorance to protocol in a sense, and Chris was just like, he was saying something to the effect of like growing up in a small town, while he knows about everything around the world, there's still like that insular kind of, well, just ask. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
the
and
simplest thing in the world. Like if you want something, you got to ask for it. And Chris is just like, meanwhile, with me, it's like I was sitting at Hanley's and just like working my day, and then like meeting, Mike Mignolo is the first person I ever talked to that I somehow recognized him from a Wizard magazine, and I was like, do you want to do a signing, here? And he's like, sure. And I turned to one of the managers at Hanley's and I said, hey, who's in charge of signings? And the answer was, well, you are now. So that's how I got to know Dean. That's how I got to know Mark Chiarello. That's how I got to know everybody that I know. But
Yeah.
just being in the right spot. And then that parlayed into Dean asking me, do you want to write a 5-page Batman story? They're going to let me do the whole issue. I already got 18 pages from Gabe. Do you have 5 pages for the rest of the issue? I was like, sure. And that's really how it all started. It's just that I just happened to be in the right place at the right time and was gregarious enough to ask somebody that I'm, a big fan of if they want to do a signing. And I think Chris, to his credit, he was just like, there's no rule book that says I can't call Art Adams.
Right.
You and I would look at that and just go, that's insane. Like because we know who Art Adams is right now, but like at 20, 28, 26, whatever, we probably would have, probably wouldn't have thought to do it, but it probably would have been available to us to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there were some missteps for sure, and like I'm going to show some of it in Pretender, some really brutal, I'm certainly not mythologizing myself or anything. I'm going to show some of the rawness of the interaction with Arthur and how that went down those 3 years that those pages were being worked on. But I still approach it the same way, guys. Like I was on the phone, and this isn't like name dropping shit. I'm just trying to think of a good example. And it was a
That's fine.
year ago, so it's not even relevant to anything I'm doing. But I was on the phone with Jeff Darrow. I'd never had talked to him. And it was just a situation where it was like, oh, maybe we'll try this. Oh, call me. And I still like it's still the same. Like I just approach it. It wasn't much different, except the fact that, yes, I'm clear minded and I'm not drinking and I don't have like these sort of I don't have this chaotic just streak in me, like a lot of dark shit. Like I'm more clear minded and things are more focused. But the same way I called Art Adams in 2003, same way I talked to James Jean in like 2005, it really was all based on a genuine enthusiasm. And I think that they understood that even when I was fucked up. And like with Darrow, I wound up on the phone with him for like 2 hours and he said no to the job. You know what I mean? But like we just he knew I was genuine and knowledgeable. And that's sort of how I've always approached it. Like, yeah, but I
Feels
did.
like
I didn't.
you don't fear the word no.
No,
You know
no,
what I mean? Like,
no, I don't. I asked Will Eisner. Look, I asked Will Eisner through Dennis Kitchen. I sent an email to Dennis Kitchen asking if Will Eisner would draw a 6-page script that Jay Lee wound up drawing for me. But I sent it to Dennis Kitchen, and when he said no, because Eisner was close to the end and he was working on the John Law thing, and he said that I still remember the reply. He said, he said that he's working on the John Law, but appreciates the offer. And I just remember replying and saying, "Oh, thank you, sir," and I hope it wasn't rude of me to ask Mr. Eisner shit like that. And I always remember Kitchen replied. He said, "Chris, never apologize for making someone an offer." And it stuck with me. And yeah, I try anything, man. Like I try, honest to God. Like if I thought I could get Todd McFarlane to do a cover for this Image Lost Fantasy stuff because it would make sense, right? Like, like I would try anything. If Todd McFarlane, I've thought many times. If I drove, I don't drive. If I drove and I wasn't such a fucking hermit these days, I'm in Tucson and McFarlane's in Scottsdale.
right.
I'd go up there and just sit outside of the building, man, like with a fucking copy of Little Nemo and the Lost Fantasy shit, and I'd say, "Hey, like want to draw a dinosaur and help me?" You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it backfires on you sometimes. Like I've approached things even like back in the day, Dean. Back in the days we're talking about of the fucking Howling at the Moon, or in these last 5 years of being totally sober and clear-minded. You go into something. If you always go into something like full-hearted, sometimes you're going to get squashed. You know what I mean? Because not everybody's cool. Not everybody's. You know what I mean? So it happens. But I
the
try
more
to
work you get, the more you do, the more you might butt heads, and I'm not going to take sides on a situation like that because it takes two to tango, right? But I just was it really. You're one of the guys. In a weird way, you remind me of another guy named Chris Orr. Do you know who Chris Orr is?
I know the name, and was he the comic book legal defense fund guy?
He did do that, I think, for a while with Charles Brownstein, I believe. But he was the guy that brought me to SPX, Small Press Expo, in the mid '90s, and he was the organizer director. But he had your personality in that he was fearless, really smart and witty,
Fearless is a good word.
innovative. And he came up with a lot of really cool, unique ideas. And like, I miss his SPX. I mean, I was a guest at SPX this year, and Warren Bernard is the guy who runs it. And I was very grateful to be a part of that. And it's grown exponentially in very interesting ways. But
so a
there
lot
was an
different. Dean, sorry to cut you off, but the last time I was there was 2016. A lot different than that.
So was I there in 2016? I mean, I was there in 25, like almost 10 years ago. I would say I feel like a lot of indie comics shows have veered into buy my print. Here's a button I made. Like, where's the comic book? What happened to the comic? But I was happy to see that SPX was the majority of the tables were comic books. Okay.
Okay.
And so I didn't have a chance to really go around because I'm trying to sell my comics, you know,
Sure.
and I'm super interested. But there's such a deluge, which is kind of a surprise, you know, like wow, there are people still making a lot of new comics, you know. So
Happy
that
accident.
yeah. I mean, I was glad to
I
see
mean, you
that.
guys did Kickstarter. You're both on there, right? And I know your friend Vito. I picked up on the talk with your friend. You know, it came across that you and Charlie McKelvey are tight, and
Yeah.
he was mentioning to me. I'll be straight up with you guys always. Like, I'm not super familiar
Yeah.
with his work, but he was brought up to me during one of the campaigns that I was a part of last year, and I'm trying to remember if it was the Armored series or maybe one of the Marvel art books. It was for, you know, for a publisher, and it was just like they were talking about him and his success. Um, so you guys are on there, and there's a million. I mean, God, good Lord, like Jim
Well,
Rugg.
that's what I was saying before about the Dave, like meeting a Dave Sim and being aware for the first time that you could just publish your one comic book, right? Like, and we're not talking about like Xeroxing, stapling, you know, for a zine, you know, which I love. I love the spirit of that. But actually getting into stores and doing signings at New York comic shops and wherever he went, right?
It,
So I feel like we're veering into that as social media for me, you know, from Friendster to MySpace to Facebook to Instagram and everything else, right? And Twitter and X and whatever. Like, I do feel like we're entering a phase of the newsletter age. Everyone's their own newsletter, right? And so
that's
we're all
such
going to become our own publishers too, you know? So, I mean, I'm glad to see that you and Jim Rugg are, you know,
yeah.
dusting off an incredible project by an incredible creator, and that should be a sexy book. But
How does that come
it's there
about?
to also leverage your Pretender book, I guess, in some ways, right? To literally put the light on in the house.
There's a plan. There's a plan to it. There's releases, like the first 4 books are planned. Yeah.
That's great, man.
You were saying, how did it come about,
Well, yeah,
Vito?
it's like I remember Tyrant, you know, but
Yeah.
I don't remember being the like I've never in a million years. It's probably the last, maybe not the last, but it'd be towards the bottom of projects that I would resurrect. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like not that I've forgotten about it, but it just seems like it's so like it's Steven Bissette. Like that's one of the last things I would like bring up of his. You know, like just like it's so weird and so like out of the blue that like, oh my God, Tyrant. I remember Tyrant, you know, like one of those things, you know, like which is a great thing. Like that's I think that's the best part of it is that it's unexpected. And
Yeah.
how did it come about? Like, because I'm
Yeah. No, I love what you're saying. I love it. Yeah, so I'll tell the story a little bit. Like, you guys usually go 2 hours, so it's not like we're
no,
wasting
no,
time
you're
if I
good. Don't worry
And
about
then
ramble
it.
and then
about this.
we have hot topics, and then I might do a versus. I
I
actually
just
have a
don't want
couple
to.
verses. But go
Okay, I
ahead.
just didn't want to take up too much,
Yeah, yeah.
Don't worry about
But
it.
No,
yeah. So back when we were doing that little Nemo Dream Another Dream book, and Jim Rugg, he did a page in it, and he was also the designer of it. Now, this also ties in very funnily, and I've had fun joking with Jim about this. And God bless Jim; he's just such a good human being that he never breaks my balls about it or even lets on. But I met Jim at an SPX in maybe 2003 or 2004, and I was with Farrell Dalrymple. And I'm very, like I look back on it, like I said, I'm very protective, let's just say, right? I'm jealous of anybody else and I thought Jim was the writer of Street Angel. And I've said this to Jim, so I don't, I've said this to Jim. I said, I thought, who the fuck is this writer? This stupid fucking girl on a skateboard. I'm a fucking writer. I'm writing the stories with Farrell Dalrymple, right? Like that's how I felt, like so territorial. It was so funny. But me and Jim, we hit it off then even, and then I think the next year I went. It was one of the only time my wife ever went to one of those things with me. But we drove down to Baltimore and went back, and I remember being in a hotel room with Jim and Jason Lex. So like I was friendly with Jim, and then when the Locust Moon stuff started up, X amount of years later, he came to the first festival, Dean, right? The 2012, the first Locust Moon Comics Festival. And yeah, no, he's just got a great design sense. So he was the Nemo designer. And during the process of it, he had said to me, do you know Steve Bissette? And I said, no, but the 2 comics that are like the most, um, you know, like if I died, throw them in the coffin with me, are the Daredevil 181 and the Anatomy Lesson, Swamp Thing 21. And that came out a year. It came out, I guess, 3 years after the death of Elektra thing or something like that. But I saw it within the same time frame because it actually came out in 83. And, you know, I saw the Daredevil in 82. And that Anatomy Lesson story was in every fucking DC comic for like 6 months. They had the little house ad that would say the Anatomy Lesson, the new DC, or, you know, whatever it was. And it was just burned in my brain at a young age. And then you read it, and it's still like, I would argue, I can make a good argument it's the greatest single issue ever. And, you know, there's other arguments too, but I could make the argument is what I'm saying. So I said to Jim, yes, I love Steve, but I don't know him at all. And he said, well, he did a Tyrant print recently. He did a Tyrant print of Tyrant in Slumberland. It was totally unrelated. And he said, would you want to use it in the book? And I said, well, yeah. So he put me in touch with Steve, and then Chuck Forsman, who went on to like fucking great Netflix success, right? Had Netflix shows, I think. But Chuck Forsman colored it. Chuck had been Steve's student at, I think it's CCS. I hope I'm not screwing that up too bad. I'm terrible with that stuff. But one of the art school up north. And
in Vermont, yeah, the Vermont.
Yeah, I think it's CCS. I something, but yeah. So there was that, and then I didn't really stay in touch with Steve at all. But when the Golem came around, I just thought it would be awesome for him to be in there, and yeah, I reached out to him. He said no a couple times because he wasn't doing comic book pages, and I just said you can do whatever you want, you know. Like honestly, if you just use these characters and tell me what you're going to do, you do whatever you want. Why don't we try it? And he did say no a couple times, but he wound up doing them, and he loved doing it. And I think it got him, you know, back in the swing of things a little bit. You know, it was always said erroneously that, you know, the Golem was like his return to comics, and maybe we played up that angle, but he had done a few SpongeBob pages right around the Nemo time. But other than that, he hadn't done anything really. So that was the relationship, right? And Vito did like directly say, for me, Tyrant was always this mythic sort of work where the work itself was staggering, like just the actual cartooning of it and the, not to get all whatever, but the fucking semiotic, like just the work itself. It's just it's very few things are on that level to me. And I always felt that way, but it was a work that died on the vine. It was a work that didn't come to completion. And in this age of, you know, the books can fucking talk to you at this point, right? They're so fancy and premium, right? It's 4 single black and white newsprint comics and all that. But in my mind, I wanted to see it out there. And I have this love of Steve. And I know I've said it other thing, like it might be embarrassing to him, but I just have this love of him where I just wanted to see it out there. And I did think there would be an audience for it in the world we're in today. In 2005, maybe not, but we are in an age of like someone like Steve who's got a fan base like that, even if it's that fan base hasn't had a reason to be active for a long time. That fan base is there, and the living legend status is there. And you know, I just thought it would be pretty successful. And yeah, Steve didn't want to do it. I asked Steve several times through Facebook. I would message him and I'd say, hey, like I'm getting my stuff together. I didn't like really talk to Steve much until about 2 years ago about drinking or anything. But I mentioned to him like, hey, I'm really trying to get active in this stuff. And we had a good time with Little Nemo. And let me do Tyrant. Let me try to figure out getting Tyrant done. There was a time when it was perhaps going to be done through a publisher that I'd been working with, and I just fucking despise them so much that I'm glad it went the way it did, or it would have been a disgraceful situation for everyone involved, you know? You know?
Let me ask you, from something that you sent us a link, are you shooting Tyrant from the original pages and showing like the underdrawing and the whiteout and all that, right? So can we also acknowledge the brilliance of Scott Dumbier?
I'm asking a guy who I do editing work for, who knows how to like do video clip shit that's just like way beyond me, how to take a video like this and take a little clip out of it, right?
Sure.
I'm asking, I did the podcast I did last week. I stopped and I actually went, let me thank Scott Dumbier, because he created the absolute format and he's created the artist edition format. And I said something like, and I mean it, like, and I guess now I put myself in the position to put my money where my mouth is next year, but like he should get a fucking royalty for every artist edition ever made. You know what I mean? Like every company does them. I'll be doing them. But yeah, I haven't really talked directly about it. So let me be a little smarter and say, yes, Steven Bissette's Tyrant, Jim Rugg designing the books, and in a really special, hyperbole's worthless, but Sean Michael Robinson, the publisher of Living the Line, who published The Strange Death of Alex Raymond, the Dave Sim book.
Yep.
He is widely acknowledged as the foremost expert on line art reproduction. And he's created special programs for this where, like I said, hyperbole's worthless, but I'm pretty confident it's going to be the most, high fidelity line art reproduction we've ever seen. Because there's Sean's involvement, and then Jim has gone through every page hand by hand.
And let me ask you, because I don't think I read Tyrant when it came out, and I've been aware of it. Is it a mute comic, silent? Is there no words?
No, there's plenty of words.
Yeah. Oh, there is. Okay, I was curious.
There's an ongoing narrative of that he relates through captions.
Got it. Okay.
To the person that's never read Tyrant, how does it fit in with other dinosaur kind of comics? I don't even know that Tyrant's a dinosaur, to be honest. It feels a little bit different than like Cadillacs and Dinosaurs or Bill Stout's like work, drawing dinosaurs.
Sure.
Like, how do we sell this to people?
The best way, Vito, the best way of differentiating it is Tylan is a meticulously researched biography of a Tyrannosaurus Rex from its gestation and the life of its mother through its birth, and was planned as 12 issues, which would take us all the way to Tyrant, the T-Rex who's born in issue 3, that would take us all the way to his death. So it was meant to be a very meticulously researched, with all the knowledge of the time that Steve was producing it in, put into this, lushly drawn, no holds barred, in the sense of not trying to sugarcoat, like you're going to see like what Steve understood to be the real savagery of nature. So that's really, I don't think there's anything like that in I'm sure maybe in some other medium, but certainly not in comics. Like, I love Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, and that guy Mark Schultz, God, right? Like, just born to draw. And he was at one of the festivals, Dean. I didn't get to spend a lot of time with him, but he was at one of them. I don't know if you chatted with him when he was, but he was at
I may have shook his hand. I remember Jim Steranko being at Locust Moon Comics. Like,
I'll tell you, we're jumping around, but I'll tell you, see, I'm a bad salesman. I got to get better at this. Thanks for giving me a chance to hone my craft, But I was going to jump to a Steranko story, but I try to remind me. But I actually have a good one. But it's so that was Steve's goal, and so we're going to be putting out, and this hasn't been said too directly, and more details and stuff. The way you do, like you guys have done these things, you want to. More details will come closer to the actual launch date early in the new year, but there will be. I think people are seeing that there is, and I guess the press release sort of said it. There is the original art edition, which will be the artist edition, and there's the complete edition. And the complete edition is what we're really, all three of us are like kind of knee deep in right now, because it will be, I think in the press release thing I wrote, I said exhaustively comprehensive, and that's what it will be. Yeah, it's going to have everything. It's going to have his correspondence with the printer, which is probably cool to maybe some people like us, right? It's going to have, it's got the whole 12 issue outline for what could have been, and
right.
Yeah.
What if we got like Farrell Dalrymple to finish it?
That would be pretty amazing. Yeah,
kidding. That'd be. All right, I want to quickly. I want you to hit a couple other things that you sent us, Pete, and then I want you to tell your Steranko story, and then I want to steer it toward a couple of hot topics.
Sure.
If we can manage it in the next half hour, if that works. You got anything, Vito? Does that sound good to you?
I'm the only other question I had was, as far as the Tyrant book, like format size, like is it going to be the size?
Thanks, Vito. No, thank you. Yeah, no, yeah. It'll be 12 by 19. The artist edition. That name is in flux. you know, almost a year ago, we're calling it the original art edition, and we have, a lot of mock-ups that would show that. But then there has been one that came out like 2 weeks ago called the original art edition.
Hmm.
So I don't know. No offense to anybody, I might still use it. I doubt it's trade. It's not some trademarkable thing to be real. And like we were talking about Scott Dunbier, somebody would have a lot of nerve if they tried to like stamp their foot down on that
He
type
would
of
never
thing.
do that. He
Right?
probably wants more people to do what he's doing.
Oh, not
Right?
him. No, not him. I'm just saying, like, if someone gets mad that I call it the original art edition, right? But we're figuring that out now. But yeah, no, Vito, the complete edition will be akin to the absolute format.
Okay.
So that's like, what's that, like 9 by 12 ish, right? And
Right.
the artist edition would be something like 12 by 19, something in that ballpark.
And available overseas, like through Kickstarter.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, we'll figure that.
There you go, everybody.
Won't be fun, but we'll figure it out.
We're gonna have that link that you can like kind of notify yourself on like when it launches. So
awesome.
Anybody that's interested, I think everybody should be interested because the set definitely, if you look at the artwork, it's just amazing. But like definitely like notify me on launch. It'll be in our show notes, like in everything. And so just do yourself.
Super appreciate that. Appreciate
that.
Yeah, Rugg and Paul Pope, who I'm there's a Paul Pope thing in the works, and Rugg and Paul Pope both say, and you can tell they mean it. You can tell when you're talking, and they both think of it as one of the, just the pinnacles of like comics art. So I think people are going to be in for real treat. Everyone involved is doing it because we love it, and it's beautiful. It works out this way because Steve turned me down 2 or 3 times through Facebook exchanges. Chris, thanks. I appreciate your interest, but I'm not going to do it. Chris, thanks. I don't think anybody would care. Then Steve saw that Jim and poor Ed Pisker did the episode on Tyrant, and he messaged me and said, "Hey, Chris, have you seen this? Maybe you were right." And I said, "Guess what? And it still took like another year till it finally became like real. And there's been twists and turns since then. Nothing to do with me and Steve, just some publishing arrangements that I was, looking for a publishing partner. And I'll be honest, I'm so down on the publishers I've dealt with that I have like Image seems awesome. And they're guys like in terms of dealing with the production crew, and that seems to me, I'm so impressed. It's like I feel like it's like I'm in the fucking Santa's workshop the way these guys do shit. It's really cool. But in terms of other publishers making books for other publishers, I don't. That's kind of where this is a big part of where this is coming from,
And that brings us to Lost Fantasy Knee Fireborn, which is an Image book that I believe you're editing. Is that?
Yes. Yeah.
And can you just briefly talk about the books, because they look beautiful and they're amazing.
Absolutely.
Just talk about the creative team and what it's about briefly, and then I want to get to the Steranko story and then other stuff.
Fantastic. Yeah. So about a year ago, Kurt Piers, who's the creator and the writer of the Lost Fantasy books, he had reached out to me and we did a Zoom together, and we talked about maybe me becoming his editor on some stuff, and we're about to announce Kurt's first Kickstarter, like his first book made specifically for Kickstarter. Kurt's a fucking dynamo, man. He's young, he's 33, and he's got multiple books at every publisher you would want to have books at, in terms of creator-owned stuff, because that's what he's. So it was, and I've told this to Kurt, so I'm not talking, shit here, and I think it's relevant as we're having this creative talk. I turned 51 this summer. And I told you guys, like, I'm hell-bent on making up for lost time, and I want to work, and I want to make comics, right? All kinds of comics, high-level, like art booky type shit, and comics that people go in on Wednesdays and have in their pull list, right? And I knew that I also had to, if I'm going to make, like, I was able to make a pretty good living at this. This year's been fucking awful. I think I made 20% of what I made the last 3 years. But the 3 years before, I did pretty good, like money I never made before. And I was getting like some advances that were like, holy shit, I can't believe I got that much money at one time, But I realized too that if this is what it's going to be, and this is going to be, I'm going to make a living at this, and I'm married, and you know what I mean? Like my wife's a doctor and all that shit. So it's like, okay, there's that. But if you're married, you're a man of the house, like you got to do your part, right? So
got to man up.
You got to man up. I know you're not supposed to say shit like that anymore, but it's the truth. You got to be a man. So I said to myself, like very consciously, and I even talked about it with a couple people, like I have to work with younger star talent. And I hate to say it so crassly, that's not really how I think about it. I mean like talent, like talented talent, you know, but like guys who are pushing and guys who know how to get shit done. And because my wheelhouse, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's where my heart is, but it's all guys our age, you know, it's like 45 to 75, right? And comics is a young man's game on many levels, I believe. And I really wanted to be working with some younger studs, and that's what Kurt is. So it's been fun. Yeah, he brought me in to be his editor on several of his books. We've got a bunch of, like, the Lost Fantasy is going to have the Fireborn spinoff, which is co-written by Franklin Jonas, who's the youngest Jonas brother, and he made his writing debut on issue 5. And would you believe sales doubled? So you know, yeah, would you believe it? Right?
Who knew?
So.
Who knew?
Yeah, but no, it's been a lot of fun, and I've never dealt with the monthly book thing, and I'm sort of coming in getting my feet wet. He's got this other book called Galactic that's coming out from Distillery, and it was Distillery's best-selling book of the year, so they're sort of riding high on that. And I just proofread the second issue yesterday, which is really my first issue. I'm credited as editor of the first issue, but I kind of really came in at the end, to be honest. But this second issue just fucking rocks. It's probably the best recent comic I've read in a while. It's just so much fun. It starts off and you're like, wow, this is Star Wars, but then you're like, oh shit, this is its own, like, kind of Star Wars. So yeah, a lot of fun. I'm digging working with Kurt on the Lost Fantasy book.
No, that's fun. And just to before we get to Steranko, why did you call you? I know you're freelance editing, but why did you call your publishing concern Lighthouse?
I did spend like a week, right? And a couple people I would talk to, like Andrew and an old friend of mine from back home, who you probably met at Locust Moon, but I won't dread your memory. He's not in comics. I did throw a couple things at him, and nothing was clicking. And Lighthouse came kind of quickly, a couple days into it. And, you know, I've said to Jim, eventually I want to make an ad that says, you know, it's Lighthouse, and the tagline is bringing the ships to shore. And you know, there is some symbolic meaning to me. Yeah, there is. I mean, yeah, after the shit I was, you know, put myself into in the, you know, 5 years, 6 years ago, I had, you know, very much in the wilderness. So you know what I mean? There is some symbolic meaning to it. And I won't bullshit you guys too. Here's the, like you were saying, the business side, or whatever we want to call it, the craft side or the practical side. I knew it would make a good logo. It would be easy. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, and I was thinking of the Legend logo, and that's like Phil Balsman designed the Lighthouse logo. And you know, Jim Rugg is, you know, he's, you know, I'm involved with Jim, so I got some of Jim's input on it as we tweaked it to the final. But I had that Easter Island head that Mignola, or Gibbons or Mignola, whoever, whichever, I guess it was Mignola did it, right? Had that Easter Island head and the Legend thing. So yeah, but no, it's got a little, I won't lie. I like, there's something about it I like, you know? Like,
I think it's great. I think it's great. I think it's apropos to your journey. So Steranko.
Yeah, so I'm giving the ghost up here a little too early, and hopefully we'll talk about this next year and do this again. But one of the things, so when I mentioned that Sienkiewicz, when I had those years where it was really when I was in the Bronx, that the Society of Illustrators night would have been in those years that you're referencing earlier. Steranko, I called Steranko one night after my mother died. And to say I was fucked up after my mother died, well, I was fucked up before she died, okay? So it wasn't any better in the aftermath, right? And I called Steranko, and I don't, you know, I was just fucked up, you know, and we talked, but I don't remember. I wake up the next day and I don't remember a word, you know, said. But I get an email, and it's from Jim Steranko, and he says, Chris, it was a little hard to understand you last night, but I tried. and he said, all I can tell you, and he goes on to tell me this just beautiful bit of advice and wisdom that only a man who could have accomplished things and was older could give you. And you know what I mean? And I'm going to print it in Pretender and use it as I'm probably going to show it on the inside front cover, and then show the actual email in the supplemental matter, you know, like have my letterer, not to say my letter, it sounds like I own a fucking plantation, but you know what I mean, right? Like, Ferrin Delgado, and he knows I love him, but I'll probably ask Ferrin to put the, like the like a quote in the cover, and then we'll see. That's getting in the weeds. But yes, Steranko, so even at my lowest point, I had guys like Sienkiewicz and Steranko who still picked up the phone, so
And it's hard, man. It's hard to pick up the phone. I'm lucky that I know of that. I don't have an addictive aspect, except maybe Chinese food. I can't help myself. I eat like every day. But my brother, who passed away,
Michael, right?
Mike, who passed away, I think 20 years ago, this November. And which I can't believe when you put that number on top of it. You go, wait a second, what? It's ridiculous. But he had an addiction problem, and addicts are hard to deal with, man. Like they can fuck up your life, and
I wouldn't have much patience right now. I got a couple friends who are fucking up right now, and I've talked to them, and I've done as much as you can do when you're 3,000 miles away,
Yeah.
The truth is this, like, nobody can help anybody with that shit. I mean, it's a cliche, but only you can do it. I had people, and if you're halfway smart, if you're not, like, and even if you're not, but like, it's really easy. I mean, the justifications are endless. I would have people say to me, you gotta this, and I would turn around and say, like, fuck you, I'm doing this, and you know what I mean, like. So, but only you can do it. Yeah, only you can do it for yourself. I got a few friends now who are, I don't know what they're doing. Okay, you don't start doing cocaine in your 40s, children. You know what I mean? There's a little life lesson for everyone. Get that out of your system, and you're
cut it out already.
I had a friend in college. His name was Ian. I don't know where he's at now. I dropped out of college, so I don't know anything about where people have ended up or anything. But very talented bass player. We used to go to Carnegie Mellon because we were at Pitt. We would go to Carnegie Mellon every Thursday night, and they would have like a student jazz like sitting in and everything. And he was just brilliant. And he was addicted to heroin. It's like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you doing this to yourself? Like this is me being kind of naive, but before I ever tried anything really, so I was a little not high and mighty, but a little judgmental about it.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
And I said to him, like, why are you doing it? Like, why are you doing shooting up and everything? And he's like, Coltrane shot up. So did Bird. So did, Miles. Yeah. And I'm like, that's not a justification for the things you do, like you're talented without it too, so.
That's the insecurity, like I wanted to let you ask the questions, Dean. I don't want to side rail us, but like, and I've told you this on the phone, I think, Dean, it's all for me, my bad moments I had in those years. And I had plenty of great moments. I mean, I think there's way more people who would say from these worst years that, oh, Chris did this for me, or oh, Chris is a good guy. Yeah, there's going to be people who said, oh, he fucking burned that bridge. Of course there is. But it all boils down to insecurity, weakness and insecurity. It's never about the other person. It's never about the situation. It's about you, And I was, we're not going to do a Sigmund Freud shit here, but like, I just had things that I thought the force of my will could conquer and correct in my personal life, in my family life. And I couldn't accept that it couldn't. And I couldn't reckon with it except to search for this constant transcendence. And you're really putting yourself on, there's no fucking transcendence. You're doing the same shit day after day, and after a while there's not even a fucking buzz. It's just you need to just, drink a fucking fifth just to be normal and shit like that. So that it was all insecurity though. That night at the society, I talked about that with Pope, and Dennis Kitchen, I wrote an email to Dennis Kitchen's daughter because I mean, Jesus Christ, I mean, that night I was the God bless, I told you, Dean, this little Mexican guy, he couldn't have been 5'6". He fucking carried me up a 6th floor walk up and put my key in the door. And I kept saying to him, you're an angel. You're my little angel. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And he said, we'll get you home. I was laying at the subway stop, laying in the street. And I said, help me. Help. I was that fucked up. I drank, before I got there that night, I drank a 5th. And then I started another 5th on the subway. And by the time I got in there, you know what I mean? So yeah, those nights are always, and the insecurity of that night I could even focus on because there was a Will Eisner night, and I'd made that Will Eisner book, but I felt like I was cast aside. You understand? So that's really why it was so extreme. But now let's get to the rapid fire questions.
I appreciate you being that vulnerable talking to us about it, because I think I also feel like there are people who I
hope it helps somebody to hear some of it.
But not only to help other people, but maybe some of your friends that you've lost that might listen to this might open back up, and you never know. I don't know. I mean,
I gotta be honest. I have to be honest. I will say there. I don't think any friends I lost. There's nobody that you know what I mean? I mean, I'm good with everybody who was close to me, Dave Proch is a guy I would have liked to talk to, and I'll probably, I told Dennis Kitchen that I wouldn't mind talking to Josh O'Neill, actually. Those two guys, if that's what you mean, sure. But other than that, to be honest, in comics, certainly not. No,
I hear you, and I didn't want to say it. I'm glad you said it.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, I would love to talk to Proch, but I understand it, right? Like I told you, right. And the same thing with Josh. If Josh decides, to talk to me, we would have a nice little talk, and that's that's the extent of it. I wish everybody well. I wasn't easy to deal with, and nobody was perfect. You know what I mean? But I was certainly, I'd be more than willing to hug them both and say, shit, I wish things ended a little differently, for sure.
Right. All right. I got two, not rapid fire, but I like that term. So in the news today, ready?
Yeah.
Netflix buys Warner Brothers. How does that affect DC Comics?
I would imagine they farm them out, right? Sooner than later.
Well, here's an interesting thing. Mark Miller has his Miller World comics. I think they come out through Dark Horse, but they have a Netflix logo on them.
Yeah.
That's something that I'd be interested in trying to understand, because I don't know that Netflix wants necessarily to deal with the comics. They might just let that be. Their whole thing is you're totally mesmerizing me with whatever the yo-yo.
Oh, this is a Mike Allred yo-yo that Chris Irving sent.
That's awesome.
I was totally just like, what is happening?
Oh, I'm sorry. My cat.
It was like he became a cat and was playing with the string.
My cat came in here. No, my cat came in, and I'm just no, Chris Irving, real sweet guy.
I know Chris.
He makes Mad Mania, I think it's called, right? Like books about Mike and Madman. And he sent me a nice care package when we were doing that Marvel art of Mike Allred last year.
That's awesome.
I keep it on my desk just because it's a fucking yo-yo, I mean,
of course.
But yeah, I don't think they have any interest in doing anything with DC Comics per se. But DC Comics, I remember, I think it was Mark Chiarello and I were talking once, and Mark Chiarello was a former VP of I think production. No,
art director.
Art director. Thank you. And Mark and I were just talking, and I think at one point he said, all it is just IP farming, like the comics are just basically being like storyboards for a movie, or they're being pictures for a toy. Like everything that the comics could be, they aren't, because they're something else.
I don't want to sidetrack it. I know we're doing the rapid fire, but when you said IP, Vito, I just sorry for jumping in. I hope I didn't cut you off too badly there. Sorry. I picked up. I started going to a comic shop like semi-regularly. It's the first time in years. The only shop I've been going to out here is like a junkyard that the guy fought with Diamond and stopped getting new shit 10 years ago or something. So it's like one of those, shit everywhere. And, but that has its own charm too, right? But it's all back issues. So that's a different thing. So I'm seeing the new releases, and I pick up a book, and I'm doing the calculation if I'm going to name the book. And I don't know. And now I have to name the book, right? Sorry, but like I don't know. I see a publisher like Ignition Press, and they haven't put out a ton of books, and I buy one because I want to support indie companies.
Mm-hmm.
So I could spend $5 on Absolute Batman, or I could spend $5 on some book that in my mind people are putting all their heart and soul into, and that's what I'd rather give my $5 to. And I buy a book and I open it up, and there couldn't be a bigger and quicker turnoff to make him even want to read the book than the company masthead. There's 14 people.
Ooh.
There's 14 people making these like there's the chief technological officer and the chief financial officer and the this and the that and the this.
Right.
I have very, very spurious fucking feelings on whether they're really interested in making comic books, you know? So yeah, maybe we edit.
That's
this
interesting.
part out.
It's funny because my initial reaction was, you ever see an indie film and it has like 30 producers, but 27 of them just gave money. You know what I'm saying? To help with the indie project.
No, this is like vice president of this, vice president of this.
Yeah.
It's like,
but do you think that they're really like
well, I don't
weighing
think
in on the product or on the comic? I don't know.
Well, no, I brought it up because I think they're an IP farm. I don't think that's anything more than that.
Oh, absolutely. I think
startup comic book company, and I'm not saying that like what I'm doing is any example because I'm not a businessman and I don't put on any airs that I am. But like, I don't know. For me, and this might be my old knee-jerk reaction that remains of like a sort of purity and intention towards some sort of purity. You know, it's just I see 14 names there, and I'm just like, this isn't a comic book company. You know what I mean? It's just like this is, you know, like I don't know.
In all fairness, it could be what is coming. You know, who knows? I will say Jeremy Hahn is a good friend of mine. I kind of trust him a little bit with the.
Is he part of it?
Yeah, I think he's like maybe art directing.
Okay, I mean he's great. Yeah.
But
and
like,
I saw Jamie Rich as the guy, and like I respect Jamie Rich.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't done shit compared to Jamie Rich, so it's not about that. It's just
no.
Seems like an IP farm, and I'm just.
I understand the knee-jerk reaction, and yet my question to you, my counter question would be: did you read the comic? Did you like it?
It turned me off so much that I haven't read the comic yet. Yeah.
Okay. I'm curious to know if actually they produced a good comic. You know, number one.
Hey, I'll message you and let you know, and I'll email our group email because I am going to read it. Yeah. The cover caught my eye. It's one of these books. We were joking about the royalties for Dunbeer. This is one of these things where Rico Renzi should get a royalty for introducing, making people think the pastel colors and all that stuff. I mean, it kind of goes back to him 10, 12 years ago. He kind of was essential in getting that going. So the cover caught my eye. And look, hey, we're shooting the shit here, and I drink a lot of espresso and tea. So I'm not being, like I said, a ton of respect for Jamie Rich. It's just when I see any comic book company, I don't care who it is, I'm working for one right now that does it. When they have fucking 13 people in the masthead, make some books, you know?
No, it's interesting. It does tickle your purity. You know,
it did.
That's probably what you're mostly reacting to, you know. So, but we didn't answer the question. Does Netflix buying Warner Brothers affect? Now, you said you brought up Mark Millar. Is it Mark or Miller? Mark Miller.
Yeah.
And apparently, he left social media today, which I don't. What the hell's that about? Or maybe
connected.
That's shit that like NBA players do. You know?
But he did have 3 single seasons of his comics produced, I believe, at Netflix.
Right.
And they didn't do well enough to have second seasons, right? Whatever that means.
And
you're
talking the shows, you mean, Dean? Like Jupiter's Legacy show?
So I guess he had sold a lot of his comics to Netflix.
Right.
And they developed them into TV shows, and he had 3 different TV shows.
I think they bought everything, right? They bought him, basically.
They bought everything, but they only made 3, and they only went 1 season each, right? So again, I don't know what that means. I don't know what's happening. I don't follow him well enough or his comics well enough to know, you know, what to have an opinion.
It's interesting though that he quit Twitter or whatever today.
That's what I heard. I read that on Bleeding Cool. Now maybe I read it wrong, but
he's a hell of a. I mean, he's you can't knock more. You can't knock him in terms of like he's always had a sense of he's a showman. You know what I mean? Like, so
absolutely.
You know, maybe there's some aspect of it to that. You know,
who knows? Who knows what what he has up his sleeve? But
there's a guy with great taste. Doesn't get talked about enough. He always gets put down, you know, because it's easy to. And I think a lot of his comics are just like, come on, you know. But he's got great taste, you know.
I've always
in art.
complimented him for the book Nemesis. And I say this with a lot of love. Nemesis is the stupidest comic I've ever read,
There,
but it's perfect. Like there's a world for like there's a place in comics for stupid comics. And what I mean is that I shut my brain off, I read it, and I'm like, it's entertaining. Like,
in getting like ready to announce the Lighthouse and Tyrant stuff, I knew I had to, because I was even though I'm working with Jim and Jim was cartoonist kayfabe, I'm totally ignorant of like the comics YouTube world or whatever. So for the last month, 6 weeks, I've been spending time and like watching it and stuff. And there are whole fucking videos that have like, 100,000 likes and are considered to be like the big comics YouTuber or whatever, about how awful, just how fucking terrible that was. It's funny. They just shit on it. Like there's one that just spends 30 minutes talking about how horrible it is. And I said to Rugg, and I said to Kurt Piers, like, because it's new to me. And I said, who would spend their fucking time? Like, there's one guy, he gets a couple thousand views, and it's like the worst creators working in comics. And it's like, dude, you're a fucking asshole, dude. Yeah. Like, what are you doing? You're like a vulture. You know what I mean? Like, contribute something or shut the fuck up, right? Like, what are you doing? I didn't understand that. Like, I wasn't aware of that. Like, it's interesting. It seems like that's where fanboys have wound up. Like, I thought the fanboy thing was gone. And what I mean by that is, and I've got, you guys can't see it, and if I stand up, it'll reveal that I've done this in my boxer shorts, so we'll just let it go. But I've got the Lobo standee from 1990 that says, "What are you looking at, fanboy?" And you put the comic, in it to hold or whatever. So I say fanboy with love, but the worst aspects, the worst connotation of fanboy, they've become these jerk-off comic YouTube people who are like, oh, this fucking writer gets it because she's a girl. All right, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but that's life, Like, why would you spend your time making a YouTube video about it?
Well, we could
bottom feeders,
discuss Comicsgate and get you caught up on that, but it's not worth it.
Oh, I had to figure that out a little with a project where the creator was talking to some of those people, and we just had to discuss about, like, just come on, man, you know what I mean? Like, it's not you.
It's a ugly thing.
Cesspool, it feels like.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, so we what we're saying here is Netflix buying Warner Brothers that publishes DC Comics. If I'm correct, is it HBO that?
Yeah.
HBO Max, yeah.
Has the TV shows and movie, the DC, right?
Oh yeah.
Does that mean it's moving over to Netflix? Is that what's going to happen? Like,
you would think.
It's hard to say. I mean, like the thing that you would probably see a correlation between is how Disney and Hulu operate. Hulu does a lot of original programming, but also they show all of the ABC shows, some of the FX shows, which is odd because Disney owns Fox. So now you see some of those things on Disney Plus.
I found it I found it very off-putting, and I continue to find it very off-putting. I mean, it's a silly thing. We're talking about TV channels, but I do find it very off-putting when I go and hit Disney Plus now, and I see fucking Kim Kardashian and these cheap ass reality. Like, I'm going there to look at Star Wars or the Robin Hood Disney cartoon, or you know what I mean, Fantasia. Yeah. That's why I pay for Disney Plus. I don't want to see the Kardashians when I go to Disney Plus. I don't want to see them ever. But I don't want to go to Disney Plus and see them.
Yeah, it's all amalgamating, and obviously it'll. I mean, I know we're not supposed to have any monopolies, but isn't it going to become one channel? All of it someday?
Oh, they've given up on that. We needed Teddy Roosevelt to smack the shit out of somebody, right? Like, they've given up. They don't even try. It's like
the other thing too, Dean, is HBO Max also covers Turner Classic Movies.
Yep.
We have I think
Studio Ghibli, ID Channel. One of the home renovating networks, Magnolia Network, Vito, I think they call it.
They're also carrying A24 movies like Ari Aster. And,
yep. They have a whole little subheader thing for that.
All that kind of goes to Netflix as well. So
you would think.
It's also very meta.
I'll be honest. If you married Netflix and HBO, right? Like, it was just one. I know I'm calling channels. I can't help it, right? If it was just one channel and it was Netflix and HBO, that's hard to beat. That's a lot. Yeah. Like, I think Netflix sucks, to be honest. Like, I I canceled Netflix last month when my bank account got so low. I canceled it and I just restarted it for I don't even know why, so I could watch fucking Klaus for the holidays or something. But I think Netflix for $25 a month, I get the least value out of Netflix. I probably
Yeah.
I get more value out of like the $8.99 BritBox or something on
Mhm,
Prime,
mhm,
you know?
mhm. All right. Well, that's we have to wait and see how Netflix affects DC Comics. The other quickie, and then I have one more thing I want to mention. Well, let me do the mention. So I don't know if last time we spoke, Vito, if I had mentioned that I had gone to the Jack Kirby pop-up, the show called From the
Yeah,
Ghetto
I
to
saw
the
the pictures.
Cosmos.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
like I saw your pictures, but yeah, I saw you with a celestial head on.
Yeah, it's Celestial. And so it's a great little pop-up show. It's on Warren Street in New York City, Manhattan. I just want to encourage anybody who's listening to this. I think it's going to be up for another couple of weeks. I believe they're doing little signings and lectures, and just look up, follow, and then there's the Jacked Kirby podcast did a podcast from there. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and they blew up the street code pages on the walls, really
Oh,
beautiful.
nice.
There's some
Nice.
original pages like an OMAC page and whatnot. So it's really cool. It's worth your while. You should go. And speaking of DC Comics, apparently and I seem to notice this every couple of weeks, that there's an effort to try to revive the Zack Snyderverse of DC Comics.
Don't.
I all that like look, I love the shit I'm into with a passion like other people do, but I just don't get the fandom of it's so childish. It's like it's an Arrested Development thing to be so fucking I didn't like the new Superman movie, to be honest. I thought it like was fucking terrible. But that said,
The James Gunn one.
oh yeah, I just thought it was
My mother loathed it.
I thought it was so bad, just from a directing point of view, like so clumsy and just the shit that he's into and thinks is cool is
Well,
just
it's weird
not.
because I really loved it when I saw it in the theater, and then I was like, okay, I like where it's going, and then I actually watched it a second time with my girlfriend Jen, and I started to see the flaws and the cracks in it. I was like, oh, okay.
What?
I mean, and then my mom was like, she hated it.
Guys, what was the character? And look, I'm not one of these, and I want to be careful what I say here because strangers see me and don't know me, and I'll say I was raised by women, and I've been married 21 years to a strong woman. So I'm not a woman hating type guy, macho guy, but I'm not either like a new age women are the most precious thing in the world. Everything they do is perfect, right? That said, I was offended by that. What was that thing with Jimmy Olsen and that desperate girl character?
Yeah,
It was offensive.
and
It
he's
was
getting his
so
own
bad.
TV show now, apparently, because of
Yeah.
that. My mother didn't like that Lois and Clark were dating. I was like, Mom, that's been happening for many
that I got it.
She's like, she
I
liked it
always-
better when Lois didn't know that Clark was Superman. Okay.
I
And
don't
then
argue with Mom, but yeah.
right. And then she what else did she hate? Oh, she really hated, and I said to her, well, wait till the second movie, that Superman's parents, the second half of the message, spoiler, is about world domination, kind of a thing. And I said, that might be a Lex Luthor fudge. We'll find out later. Who knows?
I thought Luthor was terrible. Look, everybody. I'm glad people liked it, and it's awesome if a 15-year-old, a 10-year-old, whatever, someone who wasn't into it, and they're like, "Look up in the sky, that's beautiful," and God bless, right? Just for me, I just thought it was really bad. Guy Gardner was great. He did. I mean, that was Guy Gardner. I thought that was fun. But I just don't like the glibness that is inherent in these things. It just doesn't speak to me. That's why I don't think much of it. Like the Marvel movies never meant much to me. There's a couple I think are fucking awesome. I thought Civil War was awesome.
I'm a lot more forgiving than I think. I think me and Vito are more on the forgiving side, and probably want to like the movies more than other people.
I want to like.
I'm speaking for you, Vito.
No, I was going to say I
want to like them.
I'm on the. I'll watch that movie every day, 24 hours a day, if I could.
The new Superman.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
That's awesome. What's your favorite thing about it?
People will point at the scene where they're fighting the kaiju and he rescues the squirrel as being kind of like stupid or kind of being frivolous or whatever. And I think that is just a genuine, like, it might be just me, you know, but it's a genuine thing that, like, yeah, of course he would. You know what I mean? Like, maybe not in the
I love
Schuster
stuff like
Siegel
that.
age, but you know, like, you know, I feel like that would be uh something in a John Byrne comic, you
So,
know?
so I would point out, like, using that example, the squirrel saving, which is my favorite moment in the movie. Um, I would say that the Silver Age aspects of the movie, and I think we're seasoned enough to know. Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Metamorpho, maybe not a crying Metamorpho, but Metamorpho. Mr. Terrific, I think, was the best character in the movie.
Yeah, yeah,
Mr. Terrific was great. He was solid. It worked. Metamorpho looked good. You
It
know, the
looked good.
handling, he looked real good. The handling of the character, good enough. I just, you know, I'll tell you what. Maybe one night, I'll when I unwind and I'll smoke a little and I'll put it back on. Is this we're allowed to say that, right? I'll smoke a
sure.
little weed, I'll put
You're
it
an
on,
adult.
and I'll give it another chance. There were directing moments in it, and then that relationship where they made like this good-looking girl seem so desperate and
I
like to be
know.
video, like it was so weird to me, and it did feel misogynistic to me. And I'm not that type of guy, like to look for
Yeah, yeah,
misogyny. I think
yeah.
that shit's out of control, to be honest. But I saw that, I was like, what is that? So
Right.
I
so
also
yeah.
like I also like the part when he during the final confrontation with Lex, where he's telling him that what makes him human, you know, as opposed to being like, yes, I'm an alien, but I you know, get up every day, I do this every day, you know, like, these are things that make me human.
That was the best part
I think that's
of the
amazing.
dialogue,
Yeah,
and
Okay.
crypto, of course. But yeah,
I'll say this. I'll end on a good note with it. I thought the guy was a fine Clark Kent,
oh yeah, yeah,
and I don't mean that. That wasn't snarky. I mean I'm being
no,
sincere. I thought
no,
he was a
I
I
really
don't.
get
good
it.
Clark Kent.
But
I get it.
you're entitled to not like it too, you know. You don't have to, like, you don't have to,
Right.
you know, placate anybody on the
Oh yeah, no. And look, I like that you love it. You know what I mean? Like that's what I
sure.
mean when I say I still love this shit. Like when we were 10, I might have liked Batman and the Outsiders, and you might have liked Detective Comics. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like it's
right,
a,
right,
but we're
right.
still reading Batman together. You know?
Right.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And again, I just was like, what I like that what James Gunn's point of view is bringing to the world is this weird, like, Silver Age sensibility, done it with
Well, it's more
Peacemaker,
fun. It's
you
not the
know, like,
fucking like clenched ass of Zack Snyder stuff.
right,
You know what I
right,
mean?
right.
Like it's not the fucking yeah. But you know what's funny, guys? And I can't believe I'm saying it, but it's been this in my mind for a while. If I had to choose, I like Marvel Civil War. I think that was a really good movie, very watchable. But I'll tell you, and I can't believe I'm saying it because the first time I watched it was in Philly. Dean, do you remember Rob Woods, great artist, cartoonist,
Yeah,
black guy,
yeah,
Rob Woods?
absolutely.
We're watching it and we're drinking and we're both just like shitting on this movie, the Batman Superman with Doomsday and Wonder Woman. I love that fucking movie. The ultimate cut of that movie. I think
Yeah,
it's great. But I think
yeah.
I don't like Zack Snyder though. Like I tried watching this
You,
Rebel Moon stuff. I mean,
you know,
Yeah, that was garbage. That's garbage. But you want to see the best movie he ever saw?
what,
Sorry, that Zack Snyder ever directed, written by James Gunn,
which one?
Dawn of the Dead.
One of the Dead. Yeah,
Okay,
Have
real
you ever
fantastic.
quick,
seen that
not
Dawn of the
that
Dead?
just so I understand it better, and I'm sorry we're bogged down on this one. I know we're getting off in a minute, but so is the hatred? So is it like? Does it really? Because you guys might be on there more. Like I'm not on Twitter. Like, does it boil down to like the Snyder shit is like the macho what they want, and then the James Gunn stuff is thought of as like faggy or like the, you know what I mean? Like,
Probably,
I'll put it to
probably.
you this way. When I saw the Man of Steel, and the truth of the matter is, and I say this to everybody, dictionary definition of the word like the Zack Snyder films. Like, I don't love them. I don't hate them.
I
They're
liked Man of Steel. I didn't
they're
love it. I
fine for what
loved the
they are.
Batman Superman one.
The
I liked
Justice
Man of Steel.
the Zack Snyder cut of the Justice League, even though it's embarrassingly long,
Yeah,
I liked it.
is good.
I liked it.
It's very good, even.
I liked it. I liked the new Flash. I mean, it was stupid as shit,
Didn't
but I
bother me.
liked
Same,
it.
same.
But the thing about Man of Steel, and I think this answers your question, Chris, is that I was watching it in a theater by myself, but like, it was a full theater. And there was the part where Superman breaks Zod's neck. Spoiler, you know,
Yeah.
for a 30-year-old movie or however old it is. But The movie theater was silent except for one guy at the end of my row who just went, yes. And it's like, why? Like, what was the point of him killing somebody that made you so excited, down at the other end? Like, it
Yeah,
doesn't.
that's interesting. And I'll say this: the moment that took me out of the movie is when he let his father, spoiler, die. What?
Yeah,
You may not be Superman yet, but you know you have powers to save him right now.
This ties in, Vito, to what you just said. I always remembered, if I don't know if you guys read it, but I read it, and probably read it twice, I think. That Miller Eisner book that was just them having a conversation.
Charles Brownstein was the editor, and he sucked at
Charles
my house for a
Brownstein.
week editing that.
Putting it together. I love it, right? But there's the part in there that stuck with me. A lot of great shit in there, but one part, Eisner's trying to understand the appeal of Todd McFarlane and Spawn. And Miller says to him, Will, it's like the kids in high school who would scratch swastikas into their desks. And
Wow.
you just can't. And look, that's not knocking McFarlane, because McFarlane's Spider-Man. I got Wizard 1. So I'm not going to take it down off the wall because I got it tacked up there, but I've got like the intact Wizard 1 with the Spider-Man poster. Like, McFarlane is the Spider-Man artist to me still, and he probably always will be. No one will ever draw a cooler Spider-Man. But that said, Miller said, I mean, you couldn't say it better, right? And I think that's the same as the guy who goes, yes.
It's the same. It's the same reason why I don't knock Liefeld. Like, I don't particularly go out of my way to buy his books, whether he writes them, draws them, whatever, like, I don't necessarily gravitate towards those books. Maybe I did at one point. New Mutants, Youngblood, sure, probably bought a couple of those, but I don't gravitate towards his work. But I don't knock anybody for liking him. You know what I mean? Like, he sells books. Like, and when I worked in the comic store, like, at Hanley's, like, I would never knock somebody for buying a Liefeld book. He sells books. He's got an aesthetic that people respond to, and not for nothing, like, there is a lot of fun to be had in his books.
At Liefeld, so Jim Rugg is, he's a very notable, very open. He's a huge admirer of Liefeld, and not in the sense of nostalgia. He loves Liefeld stuff. Liefeld, for me, from like 88 to 92. 91 maybe, because by Youngblood I was kind of already over it, but Liefeld had a rare power, man. I mean, I think that this whole bullshit of like he's this generation's Jack Kirby, no, he's not, but he had a really rare power. Very few people ever had it when at his peak, and I'm not saying it was the power of the best cartoonist or the power of the best comic book artist, but the shit popped, and it made you feel the energy. And at the end of the day, this used to be a medium for kids. We got so far away from that, and guys like him are part of it because they started putting thongs up the ass of every superhero, and so he's But no, I don't knock anybody like that. No, I mean, I don't enjoy his work now, and I wish he was. He seems like he's not the nicest. Like, I don't know, he just comes across very, very, just very full of himself. It would be great because he could be such a big figure for comics.
I'm sorry to be laughing right now, but because Vito creates a character like every day, and you just talked about thongs. I was like, is there a character called Thong? And Vito, can you and Matt Major create?
He's listening.
He's listening.
We can put Thong to be Rimjob's sidekick, I guess.
Oh boy. Well, I mean,
you heard that conversation, so you know what we're talking about, Chris.
Back to Rob Liefeld's feet. No, I think Liefeld from, like I said, from 88 to like 90. I mean, his books were just like pure energy, and I still look at them sometimes, and nobody would probably think that because I talk about all kinds of other stuff, but I'll look at Liefeld stuff probably once a year, and I get a real jolt out of it. Like, at his best, he was really, really, you just didn't see that energy too much. I think it's the shapes. I don't think an artist who draws in hyper detail, like, let's say, Art Adams, and God bless him, he's one of the all-time greats, but Art Adams will never generate the same energy, ever. I'm sure of it. On the page as Liefeld did at his best. That's because I think the details fuck your eye up, and it slows it down, and it doesn't run through your brain fast enough. And with Liefeld, even though he was doing the shitty cross-hatching, which was never very accomplished, it was about shapes more than anything. And that's like the energy is like a freight train, like Kirby, right? But Kirby was just, really perfect at it. But
So do we want to do one more thing? Do we have the time, Vito? Do you think is this going to crash
No, we're good. Just
the
go.
recording?
I
So
can do one more. My wife walked in as we were just doing
okay.
that, and
So
I probably got one more.
and I'm reserving this because of you, Chris. So
All right.
we do this thing called Versus. We've done it for like 12 episodes now or something, where we pit two creators against each other and we admire them greatly. So it's not like a battle royale, but honestly, what you do is you discuss who they are briefly in their career, how they might have impacted you or not, and then who you pick one over the other. Okay. So we've been doing lots of artists and lots of writers. And in fact, I have a whole list of inkers, Vito, that we're going to get into. But I did have a list of comic strips, and I wanted to give him this, Chris, or us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so obvious. George Harriman versus Winsor McCay.
George Harriman created
Crazy Cat
and Ignatz, right?
Winsor McCay did Little Nemo.
Right.
So my favorite comic strip of all time is Pogo and Walt Kelly. And that said, man, I mean, that's like Muhammad Ali fighting Muhammad Ali or something, right? Like, I'm not an expert on Crazy Cat. I think I'm somewhat of an expert on McKay and Nemo. I studied it for a while, and I was reading it when I was pretty young, like teenager and stuff like that. So, but Crazy Cat's a lot deeper. It has more. Crazy Cat's a deeper work. Which would the comics art form be worse off if it didn't exist? And I guess it boils down to a lot of opinion. But for me, I as untouched as what Harriman did, and there's like a psychological genius to it, and it's very truly American. It's like of the melting pot in its way. And I respect all that. I'm not as well versed in it, but I do think, I don't know. If you take Little Nemo out of comics, I feel like you're losing. It's just so. But again, so it's crazy. That's a tough one, man. That's a tough one. Obviously,
I feel the same way. Like, how do you? Because one is so. If I had to put it in these terms, Crazy Cat is indie comics, and Little Nemo might be Marvel Comics in a way. Like it's still super independent. But it's very accessible. It's much more accessible.
Genre comics. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like that's how I think of this these days. I think of like genre comics. Like if you're making a genre comic, there's no better home than Image. If you're making a artsy memoir type thing, maybe you want Abrams or you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, Little Nemo would have been more of like a genre comic, and Crazy Cat is the indie auteur, like the Michael DeForge of its day or something.
Or you're like, yeah, exactly. You're trying to decode it every time you look at it, or you don't get Spy versus Spy without Crazy Cat. I don't think.
Vito, you got a vote on that one? You got any definitive?
Yeah, I think. See, the thing about the McKay, like the Little Nemo, is that what we're taught usually, in creating comics is that everything happens in the gutters, and there's usually only two gutters. Like if you want to, be technical with a Winsor McCay thing, because there's like falling asleep, waking up, and then there's like the whole image, and there's so much that could happen in that image that you kind of need more panels to really understand what's happening. Whereas with Crazy Cat, it's very straightforward. It's just like, a strip, boom, boom, boom. I don't think, you're saying, Dean, you don't get Spy versus Spy without Crazy and Ignatz. I don't think you get a Will Eisner, though, without Winsor McCay, because those lush panels and those, images. So my thinking is Crazy Cat, but the aesthetic part of me is like, if not for those Winsor McCays, you wouldn't get, Will Eisner's splash pages. You wouldn't get the idea of
probably wouldn't have gotten Alex Raymond and how.
Yeah, I don't think you get the cinema language that we have, that we use even in writing, scripts for artists. I don't think you get that cinematic aspect of it without McKay. But I think, with Crazy Cat, you have the definitive beginning of what a comic is supposed to be.
I definitely agree with you, and you helped me crystallize my thoughts as you were talking. I think with McKay, if you know, and I know the game is to choose. If I was, if I'm choosing McKay, I go back to good place to go back to with John Keats. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. That's what that's what Little Nemo possesses.
Yeah.
It's a thing of beauty. It will be a joy forever. And that's not slighting. They're just different works.
Exactly. We're not slighting at all. It's funny because what you described, Vito, was the comic that I contributed to Little Nemo Dream Another Dream, which is basically an homage not only to Little Nemo, but Crazy Cat, and Will Eisner, and Harvey Pekar.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the 4 that I was going for in that. So I think we've all, and I didn't really weigh in, but I do think if I go along with what Chris was saying about getting a certain joy, I think it might be McKay.
Yeah.
Because
if I had
can be impenetrable at times. Wait, what?
Yeah, if I could only look at, like, if one was going to disappear forever, and I could only, you know what I mean? Yeah, it would be a sad choice to make, but
right.
It would, for me, it would be McKay, right. and for the simplicity of that Keats line, if you really get in, just the simplicity of what Keats is saying, it is a thing of beauty. It'll be a joy forever.
And since you brought up Walt Kelly, and I have a short list here. I actually didn't have Walt Kelly on my list, but who would his verses be?
Charles Schulz.
No, I don't have that.
That would be a hell of a verses. Yeah, for me, I would take Pogo. Pogo to me is too. When Pogo's good, like when Pogo's at its best, the brilliance of it is like, it's pretty, like, I don't know, the word play and then just the drawing of it. I would say this to Nick Pitara, and I say it to people and who aren't into it as much as I am. And nothing in comics and nothing in any art form has a sense of place to me that feels real like that swamp. And it's amazing because it's really, like, it's very rare. I don't even really like the colored Pogos, like the Sunday Pogos. I don't like them half as much as I just like the black and white strips. So it's like he's doing it with almost nothing. It's a suggestion of a tree and, the little bit, a line that says this is the water in the lake, but nothing. In fact, around year 4 of it, I have him sitting behind me. I think it's year 4 of it where there's this storyline where Pogo's rocketed to Australia. And it's just over the course of 3 panels. He's rocketed out of the swamp. He's rocketed through the sky. And when he lands, there's a kangaroo. And seeing him out of that swamp, and finally, after hundreds of these panels, you're in a different place. The effect of it was enormous. And this is recent. This isn't some nostalgic memory of mine. This is 5 years ago or something. So but Charles Schulz, I mean, all hail, right? Like,
I think I'd have to change that now. Like, now that I'm thinking about it, instead of Charles Schulz, I'd probably have to say maybe Hergé, but maybe
no. I'll tell you who and we're gonna do this another time, Vito.
Yeah.
So, spoiler, my verses of Charles Schulz is Bill Watterson.
That definitely, yeah. But
you could say that for Pogo
Don
too.
Rosa, maybe Don Rosa and Walt Kelly.
But did he do a comics? I guess he did a duck strip.
Yeah.
Well, then we would say Barks. We would say Barks. Probably.
So it's Barks. So then that's who it is, Carl Barks. So do
probably. And Schulz and Watterson's a good one. Yeah, Schulz and Watterson, that's a good one.
All right, but do you still pick Walt Kelly over Carl Barks?
Whoa.
I do. I hate to do it, but for me, Walt Kelly is just, I mean, man, some of the genius in there, and he was a brutal alcoholic from what I've read. Like, he lost part of his fucking leg, and like just brutal alcoholic, and some of that you could see, like, if you were, if you lived that sort of life, you can kind of understand like how some of the flashes of wordplay might have came to him once in a while. I don't think that's got to do with the totality of the work, but you could see a little bit maybe coloring some of it. But yeah, for me, I would take Kelly. It speaks to me. I like that kind of stuff. I got a soft spot for the funny animal stuff. And I guess a lot of it's all funny animal shit, though. That's what Snoopy is.
I mean, I enjoy, Pogo. The thing, it's not so much the word play as much as the language.
No,
reading
so
it,
rich.
Kind of, you know what I mean? For me, like reading it and getting those little aphorisms and just like colloquialisms and stuff.
Yes,
it's a lot of fun.
Just a pure joy. It's pure joy, and his line. his
Yeah,
line, right?
but I think I'd still go with Karl Barks because I think there's something about that.
Barks much better storyteller. Karl
Yeah, like
Barks,
the stories, like
much
there's a
better
rich.
storyteller. In the Sunday strips of year 3 of Pogo, he goes on he goes on this fucking Cinderella thing where if there's 52 of them, maybe 40 of them are this Cinderella thing, and you could tell he can't crack the code of it. And he's got like Albert saying, "How long is this going to go on for?" And the bear says to him, "As long as this guy can't figure out anything else." You know what I mean? And like it's torturous, and I love this stuff. Like if I swung this around, there's a whole wall behind me that's all Pogo shit. I bought the fucking toys from the 1960s, right? Like I bought the very first 1952 collection of it. Like I love this stuff. But Barks, good point, Vito. Barks is far superior storyteller. They're not even comparable.
Yeah, I would go with Barks for that. What do you think, Dean?
I'm not as versed in either of those guys. I mean, I can see the artwork, but everything I've heard about and the little few comics I've read of Walt Kelly's is, more in the George Harriman Crazy Cat world side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And I think I would give it to Walt Kelly, as sublime as Karl Barks is.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy pick.
We're talking.
No,
I mean, we're
never.
talking. We're talking. You know, the one guy we might not be able to do this with, and I know we got to go. So, but man, there might not be a fucking versus with Mobius. I've been thinking about him.
Well,
more
I
and
have
more.
I have the verses. I've already picked the verses for our future. I mean, we don't need to debate it now. We can leave it on this. But it's Mobius versus Hergé, isn't it?
I couldn't even see it in the ballpark.
Both clear line artists, right?
Mobius is like a fucking planet that's out there in the cosmos.
I would say Kirby. I mean, I would.
See, look at this. Look at this. We got to do this more often. I've enjoyed the hell out of this. I really have. And hey, Vito, Dean's got the luxury of having been Mr. New York City for his whole life. I know you work today, probably. Yeah. And I just want to especially thank you for making this time here. And
it's my pleasure.
You. Dean, you know I'm teasing you, Dean.
I know.
But no, Vito, it's great to get to meet you, man. And I have known your name forever.
My dinner.
Thanks. I appreciate all. He was. I also have to say, Chris said some very nice things before we got to recording about me, which I really appreciate. It's very nice. I don't. It's not that I need to hear it or anything, but sometimes it's just nice to hear. So thank you.
No, and thanks for being open and honest. And before we leave, like, where do people find you?
You could find it's Comics Lighthouse winds up being the branding because of all the URLs and all the trying to make things uniform. And so Comics Lighthouse on Instagram, on Facebook, Blue Sky. There is a TikTok account, but we're locked out of it right now. We're trying to get that figured out, Yeah, for right now. And then the pre-launch page for the Tyrant campaign at Kickstarter. That's sort of the main, how these things go. That's the main drive right now. Try to get that number up to some celestial figure,
Yeah.
See what we can do. We're going to go live in, in January. I don't want to say the date just yet. I tell you guys after, but I don't want to say it publicly yet. But yeah, we're going to go live in January. And then, there's books with Paul Pope and Dos Pastoris and the book I'm writing, Pretender, and Lighthouse should be fun. Thanks for giving me a chance to talk about it a little.
We'll be putting that link for the Kickstarter up in our show notes as well. Everyone, just notify yourself on launch. I think it's gonna do really well. Like I think it's a prestige project. I think it's something that is rare enough, that people will, seek it out. I have a very good feeling about this one.
Thank you, Vito. That's good to hear. No, we're hopeful and we're working on it all out of love. Jim Rugg and Sean Michael Robinson, and of course, Steve. I mean, Steve's hand painting these little dinosaur toys. I mean, get out of here, right? So it should be awesome. I really appreciate coming on here and doing this. Maybe when the campaign goes live, maybe Steve or Jim and you guys palaver with one of them,
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'd love to. All right, man. Thank you.
Thanks,
and
thank you, Dean.
Thank you. And
good night, guys. Thanks a lot.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, guys.